The stones flew down one after another into a deep abyss. Upstairs, something bad was definitely happening. Chen Yuan looked frightened. He barely restrained himself so as not to break down. The guy did not understand why his enemies were treating him so cruelly. But he laughed right in the face of SVE of the victim. He had long dreamed of getting his sister and offered to exchange the girl for life. Hearing the demands of his enemy, the guy got angry at him. He ordered that he would not dare to touch the young beauty. But what he could do, because his position was not very good, and while he was in such a limbo, he was powerless. Li Kai approached the edge of the cliff. He was going to put an end to the hero in the near future, but so far, he wanted to tire him a little. Friends began to persuade him to just kill the guy because no one would stand up for him, and there was no point in spending strength. But he felt omnipotent. He liked to mock. He looked at Chen Yuan and said that they were unlikely to see himself again. Li Kai pressed his boot in the hand of the guy, and he flew down into the abyss. There was an imminent death. The chances of salvation after falling were 0. The human soul developed high speed, and when it touched the earth, it made a lot of noise. The figure of Chen Yuan left a large pit behind itself. These sounds attracted many dead people who began to gather near the fall of the guy's body. At this time, the hero began to come to his senses a little. The young man understood where he was and tried not to think that he would meet his death. Meanwhile, they were about to disperse upstairs because they were absolutely sure that Chen Yuan was probably dead. Li Kai did not stop smiling. The villain was convinced that even if the young man survived, the zombies would not leave him a single chance of life and tear him to shreds. Then they turned and went away from the scene of the crime because they needed to find Sister Chen Yuan, Jonah. The guy was still lying and could not find strength to move. The only thing that made him live was a relative, who is now in danger. The young man did not want to die so quickly. He knew that besides him, no one could protect the girl from Li Kai and his friends. He saw that the dead began to approach him, who sensed a stranger and were going to deal with him immediately. 50 years ago, this place belonged to the Scorching Sun sect, but now all the students have turned into zombies and this area has become abandoned and dangerous for an ordinary mortal person. Chen Yuan himself began to think that he did not save, when suddenly the system of extracting objects was activated. The young man did not understand what kind of sounds these are and who created the protection mode for him. He first encountered this and, of course, happily accepted this kind of help. When the voice specified whether the hero wants to restore his health, he immediately agreed to everything. After his wounds, they began to quickly drag on. The skin of the skin became healthy, the blood evaporated, and the body no longer ached from the fall from the cliff. In less than a minute, Chen Yuan was cured and was now ready to compete with a zombie for his life. The hero took advantage of his double blade to kill all the attackers. The dead fearlessly rushed into the attack, thinking that they were completely immortal. The guy studied the first striker. Apparently in the past he was a strong cultivator and, judging by his clothes, was engaged in martial arts. Chen Yuan realized that the matter was bad because, having weighed his chances of victory, he realized that he would lose. He became scared because the forces were unequal. A bunch of dead people are about to deprive his life, and the young man decided to flee. Because fighting with a zombie alone is not the best option, and in the end you can get infected and become like them. The hero came up with a hide somewhere on the ground, for example, in the storehouse of a sect, which is located near the way out of this dangerous place. But even this simple step could lead to serious consequences, because everywhere there were living dead, and the guy came up with how to get rid of them. He decided to lure them and kill them one by one, but it is necessary to act very quietly so that the rest of the walking dead would not hear anything. Indicated for the first zombie, the hero realized that the enemies were very stupid creatures and would easily fall into a trap. The enemy attacked Chen Yuan at a frantic speed. His eyes glowed with hellish fire, the actions were quick and sharp. But our hero was not from weaknesses and was ready for such a blow, especially since everything was going according to plan. The young man sharply turned to the enemy and put his sword forward, which flew right into the head of the dead man. There was a small explosion, nothing was left of the zombie, and now the next walking deceased was already in a hurry to the place. Chen Yuan understood that the forces of the student of the lowest rank would be enough to kill him. He urgently needed additional help. The guy called the system. He ordered her to deal with enemies because she was able to heal the Russian Academy of Sciences in a matter of seconds, which means that she would not be difficult to kill zombies. But the voice refused him support because she was forbidden to participate in battle. Then he asked her to help him get out of this place. But here the system refused. After all, she could solve something only after the death of enemies. And this meant that the hero would still have to fight. There is no choice. Time to. And the young man responded to the bloody rage. The striker was neutralized. When Chen Yuan felt that some opponents were weak, this gave him a little confidence. The guy was delighted that he did. After all, he discovered this technique himself at the moment when he tested a bunch of herbs by the fourth elder. It remained small, not to overdo it with the technique that enhances its attack but negatively affects the physical condition. Then Chen Yuan ordered the system to take all the abilities of the zombies, to which the voice suggested several options for extracting skills. The most suitable was the zombie poison. The young man was very happy that there was an opportunity to pick up him. Choosing the third, the hero realized that there is nothing more important than the strengthening of his abilities, like this skill. That's just that he was not enough. Soon, the enemy's skills settled into the aura of the hero, and the young man felt how he finally overcame the key stage and entered the first stage of the kingdom of cultivation. The guy was very happy, because in the past, the fourth elder told the young man that he had no talent at all. Then the wise elder could not see that once Chen Yuan would still take the path of the cultivator. But it turned out that the head was mistaken, and thanks to the extraction system, the hero easily reached the first stage. Now not to stop him. To test his new abilities, the young man hastened to clear the way from the living dead. The enemy was not long in coming. Immediately after the first turn of the hero, he was waiting for a zombie who rushed at Chen Yuan without warning. This time, the opponent also seemed to be a slight target. The young man from one blow deprived the zombie to strike him again. After cleansing, the guy felt how he became much stronger than before. After making sure that the dead man was over, he ordered the system to extract the level of cultivation. The aura of Chen Yuan was again nourished by other people's abilities, but the young man's body demanded a greater increase in level. The young man himself understood that until he met a worthy opponent and the skills that he received were insignificant. Then the guy decided not to trifle and try to cope with several dead at once. This turned out to be the right decision, so the enemies became less and less, and the young man almost did not spend time on them. After a quick battle, the order followed that the system removes their levels of cultivation from all zombies. Now around the hero did not disappear the blue surge of energies. His biofield was in the middle of the first stage of cultivation. Chen Yuan's abilities are growing at a frantic speed. The mountains of corpses are only growing. And when the living dead did not see it all, the young man decided, then it was time to make a stop. The hero decided that it was worth returning to his sister, as he heard someone's steps behind. Someone was approaching him. When the guy turned around, he managed to appreciate the enemy. This time, the zombie was much stronger than the previous living dead. For the first time in a long time, the enemy's blow was powerful. The young man barely restrained the attack of the enemy and managed to feel pain. This dead man was not stupid. He had some kind of victory plan. To deliver a blow, the zombie moved away from the young man a short distance. Chen Yuan had a little time to prepare for a serious battle and rest a little to come up with a victory plan. The hero examined himself to make sure that he was not injured, because if only he manages to avoid infection. Meanwhile, taking the desired acceleration, the enemy rushed at the guy. The young man unraveled that the enemy was using the palm of the scorching sun against him. This secret technique was known only to one single sect. And Chen Yuan could not understand where his enemy knows her at all. It was too late to run, and the young man put his blade to take a blow and protect his life. At the place of collision of their skills, a strong flash occurred. Through it, it was difficult to distinguish who won this battle. The opponent's confrontation was so strong that the young man could hardly stay on his feet. But something told the hero that the battle was not over. Chen Yuan only understood that he would have to use his unique technique again. Otherwise, it will not be possible to stand against the enemy. The guy did not wait for the zombie to attack him again and began to collect his strength for a response blow to the bloody rage. The young man managed to get a sword through the body of a living dead and began to wait for the enemy to have now prepared for him. But no blow followed from him. The technique worked again. The zombie did not move. His eyes burned with a red flame as if he was burning from the inside. The next second, the enemy fell face down. The young man was glad that he had almost finished off the opponent and could only complete his complete victory. He rose above the enemy to apply the last attack. The young man will either have time to kill the enemy or not. The sight is not for the faint of heart. The guy's blade with a crunch entered the zombie skull. It seemed that he was already the end. Chen Yuan looked at his enemy, who did not move at all. After making sure that now he will not harm in any way, the hero was able to exhale. He fell right there in the battlefield. He is very tired? Yes, and this victory was just luck, because he still could not use the equipment twice. But the young man was not sad for long because he was distracted by a system that began to offer the skills of the dead. It was possible to choose the level of zombie cultivation, martial arts, or memories. After listening to the entire list to the end, Chen Yuan decided that it would be nice to pick up his combat skills technique. Now the hero has become the owner of the secret technique of the sect, the palm of the scorching sun. The hero thought that if he manages to master it, then he could increase his strength. In the arsenal of the dead man, there were also a breathing technique and the technique of basic cultivation. But still, the young man decided to leave himself the one who chose the first. When the transition of the skill ended, the hero hastened to check whether everything turned out, and what was his surprise when his palms were enveloped in flames. Chen Yuan began to feel even more invincible. Now he had nothing to fear, and in gratitude for the faithful service he put the like system. There was no time to relax because the hero was waiting for a new test. The guy heard him menacingly asked why he killed his son. The hero began to look around quickly. He did not see who was addressing him, and it seemed very dangerous to him. Soon, Chen Yuan was able to see who came to avenge the death of the last dead man. The figure was approaching the hero very rapidly. The guy was surprised how strong the energy of this zombie has, because he could not even feel his presence earlier. The guy immediately wondered what his opponent takes as the level. He began to evaluate the dead man and realized that this was the former master of the sect. Now Chen Yuan was clear that the skill that he took earlier belonged to her son. And now the mother will take revenge hard for her offspring. The young man immediately began to think that when she could defeat this woman, she probably has a few secret skills. He could not think about anything else, as that he needed to replenish his strength. But this time, the enemy of Chen Yuan was very unusual, at least because she knew how to talk. From that moment on, the young man began to think that something strange was happening here. But then the hero heard that death was waiting for him. A red ball appeared in her hand, which she began to direct towards the young man. She insisted that Chen Yuan invaded someone else's territory and now he could not leave alive from here. This technique was one of the varieties of the technician of the scorching palm. The hero did not want to make the battle again. He was configured to a more favorable outcome of this meeting. But nevertheless, he was not able to completely come out entirely and unharmed from this fight. Where did she get such power? The hero still decided to try to avoid a clash and escape. Turning around 360 degrees, the guy accelerated and ran away. But a zombie woman could not just let her son the killer go. She put her hand and did not stop saying that she needed her boy. Her brush instantly grew up and the hero could no longer just leave the sect with impunity. The young man didn't understand what would happen and decided to stop the blow impending on him. He stopped and began to resist the attack of a woman death. Chen Yuan held his hand while he had the strength. But soon he felt that he could no longer defend himself. The hero rushed upward to disappear from the sight of his offender. The zombie realized that the opponent was not a simple guy. She did not expect that he knew the technique of a scorching palm. She was wondering where he got this secret combat capacity, which only her people can possess. Taking advantage of the fact that she had become shocked for a while, the fact that the guy was very strong, Chen Yuan hastened to leave someone else's territory. Since 100 years ago, a zombie virus infected all unique cultivators, the world has overtaken the end of the world. On the way home, the young man reasoned how ruthless the living dead are, because they are ready to kill everyone indiscriminately. But Chen Yuan understood that since some zombies are able to talk, then not all of them are deprived of reason. A zombie woman remained standing in her former place. She clearly decided that the killer of her son would not be able to escape. She had no choice but to look after the disappearing Chen Yuan and wait for their future meeting, for which she would begin to prepare today. She was already naughty, as the sect of immortality would fall and the living dead would seize all power into their own hands. Just at this very time, real lawlessness began to occur in human society. Returning from the cliff, Li Kai was simply distraught from the incredible beauty of the Chen Yuan sister. The villain could calmly say that the young man was dead and no one would stop them. Now they're allowed to do everything they wish with the girl. He looked at Jonah and could not take his eyes off her. It turned out that she turned off her mind, and now her appearance was absolutely indifferent. But even this condition was not an obstacle to Li Kai and his friends. They thought it would be a new experience, and only the villains wanted to start their bad deeds as they heard the order that they should remove their dirty hands from the girl. What was their surprise when they saw Chen Yuan the whole and unharmed? At first they did not believe their eyes, but it was not a mirage. In front of them stood a guy whom they dropped into the abyss, and he looked very good, so that he could not be attributed to the infected zombies virus. They did not understand how this is possible. And how did the young man not only save his life, but was able to return to the community? But Chen Yuan sternly said that it was not included in his plans to die because his offenders should pay for their bad deeds. They had a lot of thoughts about this situation. For example, how did the young man not have to die because the level of his cultivation is low? Or even why did the zombies not eat him? Their dialogue was interrupted by Li Kai, who recalled that avoiding the death of Chen Yuan still could not harm them in any way. And then he completely began to openly mock the hero. He began to offer him to give his sister, and for this, a quick and painless death would be given to him. In response to the full house of his offender, Chen Yuan seriously replied that only one of them would die today, and it would be Li Kai. But the villains had a different opinion. One of the villains decided to undertake to punish the guy first. The warfare rushed to attack the young man. He thought that he had to defeat his opponent with his bare hands. But the once inexperienced Chen Yuan was no longer recognized. The guy waved his blade and ran through his neck of his aggressive opponent. The remaining villains in amazement watched aside this scene. No one else has decided to join the battle with our hero. While his first victim was bleeding, Chen Yuan was waiting for what would happen next. He silently watched as some guys of Li Kai sharply began to be afraid of him. But then the leader of this gang entered. He began to shout that no one had the right to touch his people, and even more so to offend. The bandit promised that now the guy was not waiting for a pardon. At this moment, a system came to the aid of the young man, which proposed several options for destroying a student of the immortal sect. The first was the level of cultivation, the second, methods of martial arts, the third, subject. But they all seemed very powerful to the hero, judging by how weak his opponent was. Chen Yuan thought and chose the level of cultivation. Then the hero began to feel how the power grows inside him again. But Li Kai was not going to give up. He thought that the young man accidentally managed to kill his man, and he was not so lucky. The leader ordered his people to grab the guy. That hour, 2 daredevils rushed towards the young man to follow the instructions. They were going to beat him, but not one of them even could touch Chen Yuan. Both villains flew to where they came from, and the hero only uttered that they were too overestimated and praised. What's happening? Once on the ground, they did not even understand how they lost so quickly, and where did the guy come from such a powerful force? Li Kai realized that the rival has the initial stage of cultivation, and his worthless people are already useless. He himself was about to deal with the guy. Awakening his skills, the leader began to intimidate the hero that he could not compete with him better. He would lose anyway. But the brave Chen Yuan was not afraid. He only rushed the offender to attack and not spend his time in vain. These words were even more angry with Li Kai because he didn't endure when they began to command them, because this is his main task. Now, not only the guy was waiting for death, but also his sister. Chen Yuan continued to behave calmly, which was very annoying his enemy. The young man put up his blade and was preparing to answer the attacks of the gang leader. Li Kai rushed past the hero. The young man clicked and split into several small blades. The enemy continued his game. He recalled that he is a student of the master and no one can compare with his power and strength. The enemy again began to mock his enemy. He laughed and said that it would be very easy to kill the hero. Chen Yuan did not utter words in response. The young man left his weapon aside. He does not need it yet. The hero decided that the time had come to open his abilities so that no one else dares to overtake him and Sister Jonah. The young man plunged into the flame. A fire was raging inside him, which broke out. The offender saw how the winner turns into a sacrifice. Li Kai was very scared for his life. He could not believe that Chen Yuan knew the technique of cultivation. Meanwhile, the hero stated that the villain had a chance to kill him, but he would no longer have such an opportunity. Chen Yuan rushed to attack the offender of his family. And now the leader did not want to play out. A powerful blow was waiting for Li Kai, who began to worry even more. It was like it was numb, realizing that he could not fix anything. And then a real fight began. The body of the poor leader is one and the point that flew from one corner of the courtyard to another. Even Chen Yuan accidentally broke several bones to his enemy when he threw him into the walls of neighboring houses. In the small breaks between the blows of Li Kai, that he spat on blood and asked the guy how did he know this technique. At some point, Chen Yuan was tired of this battle, and he put the blade to the throat of the poor beaten to deprive him of his life and take his skills to himself. The cowardly Li Kai began to shout that the guy could not just kill him because he is a student of the master. He dodged the sword and set off to run. What was he counting on when he tried to run away from the hero? Chen Yuan reacted quickly and wounded the enemy in the back. Li Kai darkened sharply in the eyes of Li Kai. It was the end. The man whispered something slurred, after which he collapsed to the ground. He fell face in the ground. Now the leader looked miserable and harmless. A deep wound on her back was very bleeding, and medicine was already useless. When Chen Yuan cooled a little, he repeated his recent words that he warned Li Kai that today was his last day. The young man did not sympathize with him because no one was allowed to offend his family. So it will be with everyone who will get well with him or his sister. Those people who stayed began to worry about their senior comrade. They began to scream that Li Kai was killed. The brave hero ordered the guys to get out of here. Otherwise, they were waiting for the same fate as their leader. The frightened hooligans rushed to flee with all their feet. They were very worried that the threats of the young man would become real, because everyone thought only for their lives. But then the hero revised his decision about the pardon of the hooligans and decided that if they still did not run away, then it was too late. They realized that the guy was not joking and began to beg to spare them and let them go. They began to beg for forgiveness, promised that they would not even look in their direction. But Chen Yuan has already decided everything for himself. The young man no longer trusted them because the glory of the Li Kai gang was not the best. In addition, he will still have to answer for the death of a student of the master. Having finished with the enemies, the hero returned to his sister. He looked at Jonah, who still sat down in his chair, and said that now everything would be fine. The girl looked like alive, only in her eyes there was no life. Something was wrong with her. Chen Yuan was painful to look at the condition of his beloved sister. He was ready to give everything, just to see at least a smile on her face. The purpose of his whole life was that he wanted to find a way to heal the girl. And now he comforted himself with thoughts that very soon he would be able to return her to a full life. Turning around, he realized that the time had come to extract skills from his enemies. And although he did not expect high results from them, he still took everything that they had. Then the guy went to Li Kai, who was an external student of the immortal sect. From him, Chen Yuan also did not expect big hopes. The system proposed options: cultivation, martial arts, and memories. Remembering the strong brother of Li Kai, the hero decides that he needs to prepare for a meeting with him and a little to know his new enemy. The guy decides to pick up pictures from him from the past. Choosing the third option, the young man immediately saw what the people of the murdered student of the master conceived. Their plans were so terrible that Chen Yuan did not regret a drop that he had killed Li Kai. After the young man, he decided to rest a little and began to think that yesterday he was very easy to break into a new step. The guy worked hard all night. This helped him to lay out on the shelves all his new abilities and stabilize the development of the First Kingdom. For his efforts, he managed to get the average stage of the formation of the nucleus. He was so inspired by his successes that he thought that in the state of his sister there was also some changes. Chen Yuan approached her and raised the sleeve of her robe. He looked at her hand and made sure that everything remained as before. In the shoulder area there was a noticeably dark spot. It was a poison that filled part of his sister's body. The young man was still glad, because fortunately the poison did not spread on. He was very worried about the girl, because she was his only dear person, and the young man was afraid to lose her. They grew up orphans since childhood. In the past, the zombies were everywhere, and they were forced to look for a refuge in the kingdom of immortality in order to survive. At that moment, when they began to feel safe and seemed to have a danger, as one of the living dead managed to bite Jonah by the shoulder. Then they managed to hide from enemies. But from that very meeting, the girl lost sensitivity and became so indifferent. The hero again stroked his sister and thought that it was great happiness that she did not turn into a zombie. Since then, he didn't stop looking for a way to completely heal it. Leaving the Chen Yuan yard, he met Wan Chu, who reminded him that today was a special day for the young man. The guy completely forgot that the fourth elder would have to test. He ordered the hero to hurry. The guys went to the meeting because it was impossible to be late. Chen Yuan was preparing for this test, especially since he had something to show. The elder, where they went, was engaged in herbal. It was this sage in the past that he refused to take in the sect of our hero, saying that he had no talent. But the young man did not retreat, and he managed to persuade him. The fourth elder, with a huge unwillingness, was accepted by Chen Yuan. But for this, the guy had to become an experimental object. Sometimes he had to take pills developed by the old man, which contained dangerous toxins. Due to adverse reactions, the hero often became ill after their use. This was the price because the guy was in the immortal sect. The guys have already come to the appointed place. The elder turned to them and greeted them. He noted that Chen Yuan had not seen for a long time, and from their last meeting, the young man's aura became much stronger. The young man thanked the old man for such a close attentiveness to his person. The hero had not yet dared to admit that he led him to such success, and said that the correct instructions of the elder were all to blame. The sage looked, as always, thoughtfully. The man said that recently he has been developing new pills, in which he used spiritual herbs to cleanse. Chen Yuan has always been interesting to look at this process. He looked at a huge golden pot, which was formed for a day-on-end recipes for new pills. The fourth elder claimed that right now everything was ready. However, after his words, they noticed that the boiler had too warmed up. The device gave the sage 3 burnt balls, from which an unpleasant smell emanated. The creator of these pills looked at his creation. It was evident that he was disappointed, but still did not understand where he was mistaken. The elder intently examined the smelly pills and was forced to admit that he had nothing to do. The smell of fast spread throughout the room, and in order to at least somehow get rid of it, the old man gave them to our hero. Chen Yuan was surprised from his demand. The guy first thought that the man had gone crazy and decided to just play a trick on him. But by the appearance of the elder, it was not clear that he was joking. On the contrary, he was serious and recalled that the guy here is a subject, including for unsuccessful experiments. Then, Huan Chu intervened in the conversation. He called Chen Yuan too selective and rushing the hero more like this. The last word was behind the sage. The man defiantly turned away and said that he did not want to hear anything else. But at the stake, there is a further finding a guy in the sect of the immortals. For the first time, Chen Yuan was so uncertain. He had never had to use unsuccessful pills before. After all, no one will guarantee that after he eats them, nothing will happen to him. Here the system intervened, which suggested to choose the necessary option. The young man could extract either toxins or essence from tablets. He did not think about the choice for long and finally decided to protect the pill from harmful substances. Having voiced its choice, the system notified it that toxins are successfully preserved in the body and will automatically be ready for extraction. Now Chen Yuan was absolutely calm that he would not die from these unsuccessful pills. Now there should be no problems. After the excretion of the toxic substances, the pills became more powerful. The guy immediately felt his physical condition intensify. The elder closely watched the state of the hero. He began to ask him to describe his inner sensations. What was happening in the body of a young man liked him? Chen Yuan looked at the sage and asked for supplements. Wan Chu asked the sage whether the young man really ate all 3 tablets. The guy thought his friend was crazy, but the elder told him to check the subject. He obeyed the order. Approaching Chen Yuan, he asked him how many fingers he sees. However, instead of an answer, the guy decided to suddenly hit Wan Chu in the face. He stepped back and grabbed his cheek. With such aggressive behavior, he scared all those present. But Chen Yuan was in no hurry to apologize. He only said that no checks needed. The hero claimed that he was in perfect order. The sage came to the conclusion that all this is very strange because the pill had no chance of successful assimilation in the body. The elder decided to say goodbye to the young man for a while. He said that while he was free, but after 3 days, he again waits for him in his laboratory for repeated experience. The 4th elder suddenly noted for himself that Chen Yuan is already becoming much more interesting than before. Having said goodbye to the young man, the sage was left alone with Wan Chu. Suddenly, the old man began to cough strongly and spit with blood. The guy was scared for his master and asked how he feels. But the sage told him not to approach, he reassured him, saying that everything was fine and this is just an old ailment. He did not stop thinking about how it turns out that the unsuccessful pill does not contain dangerous poisons. Why did the young man eat a large dose of toxins alive? Meanwhile, the hero was returning home. His head was spinning that the pills were very unusual. He walked and a tree appeared on his way. The young man decided to take advantage of this and immediately test his power until she disappeared. After making sure that there were no witnesses to Chen Yuan nearby, clenching his fists, began to quickly approach the barrel. Very soon, there was a strong crackle and the tree fell with a noise. The hero was delighted because now he has the opportunity to protect himself and show all his power. Soon, a young guy approached the young man. He turned out to be Huanan. Chen Yuan seemed very strange that it was here that he met him. The hero was glad to see him because it was the only friend in the sect. Without ceremony, the young man decided to ask where his comrade disappeared all these days. Knowing what his friend is fond of, the young man is already accustomed to such sharp disappearance. And Huan did not get the money in a very honest way. The guy often disappeared on the territory of the zombie and robbed them there. The blonde believed that the living dead no longer needed their countless wealth because they only do for days that they are looking for people. Then, the illegal businessman began to tell the hero how he managed to find a hidden sect nearby in the mountains, which also suffered from zombies. Huanan honestly admitted that he was hoping to put together a fortune, but he did not fall into the trap. After hearing a comrade, Chen Yuan was in earnest for him. The young man suggested that he leave dangerous activity, because if he had misfortune, he would not even be able to bury him humanly. But in the life of Huanan, it was also not so simple. The guy simply had no other choice, because before the death of his teacher, he made a promise. The young man promised his dying master that he could open 108 tombs. Only after that, you can go on a well-deserved rest and do something else. Then Huanan spread his hands that he could not let his teacher. It was clear that it looked like this activity began to bring him pleasure. Then they began to talk about the state of Jonah. The blonde was interested in how her condition is now. But Chen Yuan said that she still does not react to anything. Then, in order to support the friend of Huanan, said that the medicine is possible is in one of the tombs and one day he will find it. Our hero hoped that if not himself, then at least his friend could arouse his sister out of this eternal oblivion. However, Chen Yuan knew who could probably help. It was the head of the sect. It seemed unreal for Huanan because this respected master was always busy and did not like to sit still. The chairman had almost no free time and no one knew where to look for him. Then how is Chen Yuan going to meet him? So far, the hero did not know how to do this, but for sure, if you think carefully, then there will be a way. Huanan suggested that the young man planned to first meet with the older sister from the outer sect. Chen Yuan realized that his friend has long-nourished love feelings for Ye Yun and knows everything about her. The young man said that she recently decided to go on an expedition, and just now the girl is looking for people who will accompany her. The plans of the blonde in love were invited to this contest, and his friend. But the hero was not entirely sure what was suitable for this role. Huan An was in a hurry to reassure the guy because people always need people to fulfill tiring instructions. They will not have any benefit from this, but the place for the expedition is a spiritual field on the mountain of the Sight Sun sect. The guys knew that the living dead in this area were very weak and stupid, and they will have a lot of time to freely collect spiritual herbs there. Having sold these healing plants, the guys will receive their share. The amount will be rather big, and they will definitely get rich. From these thoughts, Chen Yuan became ill. The young man understood that he had money alone on his comrade. He thought about his safety last. The hero immediately remembered the mother of one zombie he killed. The young man said that the opinion is that all the dead have no reason mistakenly. He talked about what they might not be able to return safe and preservation. Huan An agreed that the zombies from this sect are very dangerous. However, he believed that if there was Yi Yon with them, then they are in complete safety. He assigned great hopes to his treasured love and dreamed that someday they could be together. Chen Yuan had no choice but to agree with a comrade and trust his feelings, he told him painfully believably. The next day, friends and several more young guys expected the appearance of the older sister Ye Yun. In the early morning they came to this place, and now for several hours they stood under the scorching sun. Why is it still not? Chen Yuan was very tired. He began to assume that something happened to the girl. The guys looked around and learned in some people the students of the external sect. They immediately had questions that they forgot here. Among those who came was a student of Zhu Chenlong, who openly mocked the guys. He could not believe that they were also going to take them on a trip. With such a negative, friends did not think that they would face it, where everyone should hold together or at least pretend that they were a team. Huan An decided to discharge the situation and hastened to answer that they were simply purely by accident here. The people of Zhu Chenlong began to tell him that it is better to let the guys go with them, because at a difficult moment they can serve as a live shield. The guys did not notice how Madame Ye Yun approached them. The beauty asked if everyone was ready. Many were blinded by her beauty. Zhu Chenlong was in a hurry to answer that everyone had already gathered and ready to hit the road. There were no tests and competitions. The few people began their procession, led by Madame Yun. Zhu Chenlong began to tell the girl that in the courtyard, the spiritual field of the sect of the scorching sun was found. He suggested that it would be possible to send someone for intelligence. She liked this idea. Then the young man ordered Huan An and Chen Yuan to go and find out something useful. The blonde was stunned because they send them to certain death. However, I met with a harsh tone of Zhu Chenlong, who said that this will be their test for strength. Huan An did not calm down. He did not understand why the chief student of the sect disposes of the lives of less weak pupils. What is the injustice? The fact that his order became the subject for the dispute did not like him at all, and Zhu Chenlong was going to punish the naughty participants in the campaign. Then the mistress herself intervened. The girl ordered to immediately stop the quarrel, and he had to obey her. Then Ye Yun pointed a finger at Zhu Chenlong and said that he himself had to go to reconnaissance. However, the guy did not agree and said that the guys were weak and it would be better to sacrifice their lives. Ye Yun stared at the student. She realized that he was evading her order. She did not value such subjects. But realizing that everything was very serious, Zhu Chenlong decided not to extend his mistress and went to fulfill her order. Leaving, he looked towards the guys and gave himself the word that when he returns from the assignment, he would definitely deal with them. But the foreboding of the protagonist suggested that this would not happen, and they see the living Zhu Chenlong for the last time. Then Chen Yuan thought that the lady seemed to decide to help them. He quietly informed his friend about this. Huan An always knew that the sister of Ye Yun has always been honest and fair. In her act, he did not see much interest. The young man believed that the matter was in her character. At this time, Zhu Chenlong was thinking about why the girl sent him to such a dangerous place. Doesn't she really value her students at all? The guy stood at a huge gate and did not dare to go inside. Horrible pictures came to his mind that he would suddenly attack the whole horde of zombies alone. Now, nothing is left of the bold and strong student of the sect. He was shaking with fear and firmly decided that he was not going to enter there. Zhu Chenlong fans closely watched their leader. His unwillingness to fulfill the order of the mistress they interpreted in favor of the guy as if he was careful and probed the soil. So without coming up with a good plan, he could not disobey the sister of Yeyun, because then he was waiting for the expulsion from the sect of the immortals. Everyone watched how stupidly decided to act their idol. The guy destroyed the entrance gate with his sword. Crowds of living dead will run to the noise. No one understood why he did this. After all, with his actions, he only worsened his position. Crap! How many of them? Zhu Chenlong was definitely not ready for such. Unreasonable creatures immediately noticed their victim and sharply changed their direction of movement. Zombies put their hands forward and rushed to catch up with a frightened guy. The student called loudly to the aid and tried to break away from his pursuers. Everyone saw how Zhu Chenlong talked. All zombies fled to him. Allowing him to explore the situation was a mistake. Even Madame Yeyun was unhappy with what she chose for her assistance to such a cowardly student. It was clear that Zhu Chenlong was heading back to the camp, and all the zombies would come for it. The girl exposed her weapon and told everyone to get fighting. When smelled fried, Huanan called his friend with him. The young man did not know how to fight and loved to solve conflicts verbally. Yeyun was an example for all students of the sect, and even in such a dangerous situation was not going to sit out somewhere aside. The girl was used to participating and wanted all the people close to her to be as fearless. The guys hid behind a wide stone. Chen Yuan did not quite understand why they were hiding here, but the thought-out Huanan replied that they have no other left. The young man sincerely did not understand why they would leave the shelter, because then he would have to face the zombie face. While they were talking, they lost their vigilance and did not notice how Zhu Chenlong approached them. He realized that after the victory over the dead, he would have a long trial with the mistress. Fortunately, he managed to escape. And then all three are found. Zhu Chenlong again raised the noise. He began to scream that while everyone was fighting the guys standing here and hiding. Huanan is very angry. He began to blame the student of the sect that he was no better than them because of him the dead attacked them. Then the guy began to expel the young man out of his shelter because he was here an uninvited guest. Offended, Zhu Chenlong decided to punish the offenders. He thought that now no one could protect them. But he was mistaken again. Their loud quarrel attracted the attention of the zombies, and now all three were victims. Zhu Chenlong took out a secret bottle. He thought it was a good opportunity to end hated friends. The guy broke this bottle, and the friends noticed that the dark gas began to dissolve in the air. Chen Yuan wasn't aware of what kind of substance it was. The smell from him was just a nightmare. The guys did not stop coughing. It turned out that it was a cadaverous poison that instantly had to pull the zombies to this place. It was a plan of Zhu Chenlong to take the lives of the guys in this way. As a result, he began to shout that they themselves were to blame and their sharp conversations had long made them enemies. Huanan warned him that even if he became a zombie, Zhu Chenlong would still be responsible for his vile acts. But he had his own thoughts in this regard. The guy believed that, becoming a living dead, they would lose their minds and would not remember anything. While they chatted on the stench, the first batches of zombies began to escape. Huanan, as usual, found a brilliant plan, an escape. But it was too late, and Chen Yuan had to state that they would not be able to escape. A very unpleasant situation. Huanan already began to regret himself that he had not yet lived, and now he would have to die so early. But our hero had other plans. The guy tried to calm his comrade. He suggested not fleeing, but to try to defeat the opponent. The young man pushed his friend to kill the zombies. An awkward silence hung. Chen Yuan didn't like that his idea introduced his friend into numbness. The guy didn't understand why he was so stared at him. Finally, Huanan said. The young man asked if his friend knows his secret. But he did not understand anything yet. Then he was delighted, because it turns out that now they are real friends who have absolutely no secrets and understatement. The next second of the hero, he almost knocked down a frantic rush of a powerful aura. The young man was speechless. Everything was to blame for his friend who did not know how much time he hid his abilities from him. But now, when everything has opened, Huanan, as a distraught, rushed into the attack. He could not restrain him, however. It was superfluous. Chen Yuan was still impressed by what he heard. The guy did not understand how a friend managed to restrain himself for so much time and powder his brains that he could not. Although it was possible to guess about this before, because Huan An was so curious that devastating the tombs would not be a sin to extract a couple of techniques for himself personally. The young man was in a hurry to make excuses to the hero. It turns out that he reached the middle stage of the First Kingdom 6 months ago, but did not say so as not to attract excess attention. From such a recognition, Chen Yuan did not become easier. The young man thought that he himself would like to boast of his technique, but he was ahead of him. Then Huan An completely sincerely wished his comrade to train more, and only then he will be able to achieve such high results as him. Then he commanded that they should get rid of the cadaverous smell with which their clothes were saturated. Huan An believed that Mrs. Yun could help them, so the first thing was to find her. The guy was still worried that all the living dead would run to this stench. After waiting until the young man moves away a little, Chen Yuan looked at the murdered zombie. Then he, imperceptibly for his comrade, has removed the level of cultivation for himself. Nevertheless, his friend should learn tricks. It turns out that, having taken the technique of the last dead, the level of the hero grew to the late stage of the First Kingdom. He barely restrained himself so as not to scream with happiness. Meanwhile, the mistress finished her next battle. The girl waited for the cherished words of her assistant that all the zombies were killed, and there were no victims among the students. The girl asked again. She was interested in some personalities in the person of Chen Yuan and Ye Yun. However, the answer of Zhu Chenlong gave a negative one. He said that, unfortunately, the guys died heroically. The mistress demanded details. The eloquent student did not come up with stories. He said that the first to come to his mind, as if they were seized by zombies, and they could not protect themselves. After he said that they had the lowest level of cultivation, the guy received a sonorous slap in the face. Zhu Chenlong did not expect such a reaction. He really did not understand why the girl was so cruel to him, but she did not blink an eye. The lady asked why the student was so happy and what he was so pleased, because the guys died through his fault. The beaten assistant tried to rectify the situation. He began to say that the guys would only be a burden to them in the future. But then a familiar voice asked why they all got that they died, why buried them. Zhu Chenlong saw his enemies again. How? Why are they still alive? These two are some invincible. The guys also came with the guys, which the mistress immediately felt. He was familiar to her, and she asked where he came from. The fast Huan An was really waiting for the girl to ask this question. Now he gladly said that her assistant would be to blame for everything. It was again the work of Zhu Chenlong. The young man pointed to him and confirmed that because of his actions, they were almost killed with Chen Yuan. The poor guy was again under the blow of the lady. He began to justify himself and ask her to listen to him. This time, Ye Yun didn't listen to empty excuses and resorted to already familiar punishment. Then she said that she gives her student the last chance to explain. But if at least the word turns out to be a lie, then she would immediately kill him. Zhu Chenlong has not ceased to experience fear for a long time. Now he thought well and decided that there was no need to deceive the girl and should be silent. Huan An intervened again, who recalled that cadaveric poison would spread everywhere. The young man claimed that it can be defeated with the help of human blood. The guy's plans were to kill the hated Zhu Chenlong and check rumors in practice. Ye Yun asked, "Is he sure of this, that this will help?" The poor student realized that he had made a mistake and began to beg for forgiveness, first with the mistress and then from all the participants in the expedition. But the young man was adamant. He saw Zhu Chenlong shaking with fear and he liked to dominate him. It was obvious that apologies would no longer help him. Ye Yun was determined. The lives of all her students stood at the stake, and she was ready to sacrifice one fate for the sake of the safety of the rest. She sharply reduced the distance. The blade flashed in her hands. With a quick blow, she injured Zhu Chenlong. The guy was wounded. He began to bleed, frightened in his eyes. And only Ye Yun was calm. The girl decided that this would be enough to punish the false assistant. Her cruelty was quite fair, and everyone agreed with her actions. A little later, when the guys got rid of the cadaverous smell, it was possible to continue the expedition without fear that they would suddenly attack them. Having finished with this, the girl said that she no longer sees obstacles to go to the Garden of Spiritual Grasses. Left alone with his enemies, Zhu Chenlong again took up the old. The guy decided to continue to defend his honor because the guys put him a clown in front of everyone. But Huanan began to drive the student, otherwise he again come up with a plan against him. The guy had nothing left to keep silent, but he decided that he would not leave it like that. Chen Yuan was waiting for everyone to leave and now calmly asked for the system to remove the level of cultivation from the killed zombies. The hero liked that it is so easy to increase his skills. There were a lot of victims and the guy was perfectly feeling a surge of strength in his aura. But he especially liked the fact that he did not spend a gram of his power for this. It was decided to continue the journey and the detachment stopped only when the building appeared in their way, behind which they were waiting for a spiritual circle. The girl was noticeably worried because she had no idea how their campaign could end. But deciding that your feelings should be hidden deep in yourself and not show them to everyone else so as not to lower the fighting spirit of their students. Entering inside the guys, they felt a concentrated smell. There was the first to go, who also felt a sharp aroma of herbs. Some guys began to behave very badly. They lost their minds due to the free number of healing plants and completely forgot that they could become an easy prey of the enemy. The distraught guys did not immediately notice that they almost fell into a trap. An unpleasant smell came from the herbs, a cadaveric poison. Ye Yun stopped her students because there are still spiritual energy in plants, but, unfortunately, cultivators will not be able to extract it without touching the flower. Everyone was immediately upset because it turns out that they came in vain, because it turns out that the herbs are spoiled. The mistress told them that the Slovi Sun sect has another spiritual field that is protected. In her opinion, there may be untouched plants there. Chun Yuan examined the grass infected with poison. He was interested in whether he would have to extract any of them with the help of his techniques. Of course, he did not want to lose such an opportunity, especially since this would not do any harm to him. The system immediately invited the guy to form a pill from healing power or simply extract a cadaveric poison. The hero decided to reorganize everything in pills. It seemed to him that this is the most suitable option. At this moment, the system began its work and as a result, the guy managed to collect 10 healing pills, 5 pills of vigor, and 3 explosive energy. After that, the plants began to disappear and others noticed that for some reason the flowers began to evaporate. What's happening? Chen Yuan was now all power, but the guy did not expect it to be so noticeable. The young man was not at all ready for such a turn of events. The mistress could not understand why this was happening, but the girl guessed that someone secretly extracted useful substances from healing herbs. This spy was in her detachment and was still unnoticed. But she was never allowed to recognize the person who stole the grass, because she was called, saying that they found another field. The detachment followed further and stopped only at the entrance to the palace. The lady said that inside there is a circle of spiritual energy. Zhu Chenlong was not so useless. The guy said that according to his information, it was this zone that is the entrance to the spiritual field. Madame Ye Yun decided that the only way to check was to go inside. But there was a danger that the dead would attack them. In the middle of the building was very quiet. While the guys looked around, suddenly the girl decided to attack the girl. She expected that they could wait for a trap here because the place was very famous, and if it was not guarded, it would have long been a tidbit for many who were chasing easy money. The girl tried to protect herself with her blade, but the opponent evaded the blow and put up the defense. She was very amazed at what she saw because she first met such a strong living dead. Ye Yun ordered to immediately hide behind her. Everyone who is not able to fight. So far, there was only one opponent, but they may be much larger, and so that the students would not cover the panic, she prepares them in advance. The first victims in human ranks appeared very quickly. Many heard Zhu Chenlong screaming. He didn't want to die, but the zombie had already bit the guy by the neck. The mistress again gave the soldiers an order so that everyone who has the first stage of cultivation begins fighting. It was clear that this time the victory over the dead would have to compete. After he ordered the girls, the guys rushed to the attack. Everything went according to a clear plan until she heard that one of the strong students was in danger. She hurried to the aid of her student. Zhang San bit the zombie, and very soon the guy will turn into the same creature. The young man did not understand how it happened. He began to say that he did not want to die, and his eyes became wet. Yeyun was very sorry to lose such a talented student, but she could not help him because no one had yet come up with an antidote from a zombie virus. The transformation of the young man happened very quickly. Now, only a shell remained from the previous strong man. The guy forgot how to talk, and all his friends were now victims for him. The mistress acted according to the rules. She neutralized the striker, and the enemy immediately died of her sword. She had no choice but to do just that. Then Ye Yun said that such a fate should overtake everyone with whom this will happen. No one could be an exception, even she herself. The zombie virus cannot be removed from the human body. Chen Yuan was disagreeable with her. He continued to believe that he would definitely find medicine in order to heal his sister. The young man knew that not all infected are dangerous. Then they heard steps. The guys turned around to understand the enemy or a comrade is approaching them. Everything was shaking from his steps. A large zombie entered the room, the most formidable guard of this place. No one has ever seen such a huge living dead. By the remnants of his clothes, one could understand that he was very influential before. Zhu Chenlong was ready to rush into battle. It didn't matter to him what the enemy was outwardly. He naively thought that all the zombies were inept. The student rushed towards a huge zombie. Even the order of the mistress, so that he would stop, could not stop him. As expected, this character was reasonable. The giant put his fist, and the young man received a blow in the face. Everything happened so quickly that the rest were shocked by the enemy's ability to defend themselves. To guard the circle of the spiritual kingdom was assigned one of the 4 mountain guards of the Sight Sun sect. Ye Yun clearly realized that their business was bad. The guys were scared because it was one of the best warriors of the clan. Being an uninhabited virus, it would be less dangerous for them. Ye Yun did not give in a panic. She understood that all the abilities of the enemy remained with him. Even some increased in the level. Nevertheless, this giant remained a zombie, which means that he certainly had a little intelligence. Then, the guys will definitely be able to defeat him. The brave Chen Yuan was about to go to try his strength as follows, but something restrained the young man. His comrade was in a hurry to warn Huan An. The guy wanted to return his dear friend in real time. He was interested in why he was in a hurry to die. The hero was definitely in the blow. He honestly admitted to his friend that he was going to fight with a huge guard. But the sober Huan An ordered to leave this task on the rest and again wanted to sit in a safe place. The guy suggested using the portal to get to the spiritual circle the first. The hero liked this idea and he agreed. Friends went to the very center of the circle. Their actions did not go unnoticed. Zhu Chenlong thought that he was mistaken, and these strangers are quite smart. The guy decided to follow their example and also went into the portal. He believed that he would soon be able to defeat them because he hated strangers even more than a zombie. A little time passed and the guys moved to another place. Friends were in an underground cave. Huan An considered a new location with interest. He made his assumptions that there are definitely treasures. And Chen Yuan noticed a true treasure nearby. Healing herbs grew right on the stones, and it seems that they were not shrouded in poison. But the hero noticed that they were not here alone. A little aside stood Zhu Chenlong, who was unhappy, as always, that the guys were ahead of him. The young man was absolutely calm, and this was even more angry with his enemy, who was about to start the battle immediately. Huan An was afraid for a comrade. He began to scream to run, but Zhu Chenlong replied that no one would have time to hide. Everything happened very quickly. The enemy did not even have time to get closer to the guy, how Chen Yuan hit his opponent. The guy flew one way and his weapon in the other. The hero could not understand how a weak student could achieve the location of Madame Ye Yun, because besides that, he is not suitable to talk for anything. Huan An was in shock. Where does this force come from? Chen Yuan first publicly showed his military equipment. Even Zhu Chenlong himself did not understand how to hide his abilities for so long. After all, he always considered guys not having talents. And our hero was interested to observe the reaction of others because he did not demonstrate himself until the last. But now it's time for everyone to find out that he is not devoid of surprises. Huan An thought about being offended by his friend. He previously thought that Chen Yuan had no skills, and the enemy didn't leave attempts to defeat the young man. He began to threaten that no one dares to behave like that with him. Zhu Chenlong believed that he was the best student of the sect, and for the disobedience of his orders should be punishment. He was going to kill the young man. Our brave hero was not going to sit aside or beg for forgiveness from his enemy. Instead, he suggested that the experienced student of the sect strike him first. Zhu Chenlong decided to go to complex techniques. The guy was going to use an unshakable gold form. He applied a palm that always saved him in a difficult situation. The student was going to crush the enemy and move on to the collection of healing colors. Chen Yuan suddenly worried he never saw or heard about this technique. It was clear that this was very serious power. The hand was approaching, and now she had already broken the guy's sword. Now her goal was to kill the young man. Can't he do anything? Where to wait for help? The opponent felt that victory would be behind him. Zhu Chenlong directed all his power to the hero. Then he connected both hands together, which meant only one thing. The student was about to end a young man. Behind, Chen Yuan heard the voice of his friend, who proposed combining forces against the unshakable gold form Zhu Chenlong. However, the brave young man was not going to connect with Huan and into a single hole. He wanted to finish this duel himself. The guy accelerated properly and aimed at his enemy. The hero had long had plans that he wanted to implement. When the Chen Yuan approached the enemy, the guy jumped up and waved his hand in which he had already prepared a good portion of energy. This attack greatly harmed Zhu Chenlong. He fell, and even his protective field did not help him. A student of the immortal sect hit painfully. He could not believe that his abilities were not the highest and could not defeat Chen Yuan. Aside stood Huan An, who was speechless from what he saw. The young man asked if he was his friend in front of him, and Chen Yuan was embarrassed, regarding the words of a friend as a compliment. He spread his hands and replied that he had hidden his strength a little. But Huan An could not just calm down. The young man began to pester his friend with questions about where he got such energy from. The restless blonde began interrogation. Most of all, he was interested in which kingdom reached Chen Yuan. He had the opinion that a friend was dishonestly captured by his abilities. Chen Yuan decided to leave questions for later and quickly collect medical herbs. The hero least wanted to run into trouble in the underground cave. The dissatisfied comrade reluctantly made the same decision, but the young man firmly decided that after he would definitely return to this topic again. Then, the hero secretly began to extract techniques from the murdered Zhu Chenlong. The system instantly proposed options: memories, cultivation, or low-level gold skeleton. The hero realized why his weapon was so badly damaged in their battle, because the guy had a special physique. Now it became clear that only thanks to his figure, Zhu Chenlong became one of the best. And although it was the lowest level, the guy chose the third option. It is still better than nothing. The system began to extract the skeleton. Chen Yuan began to feel very quickly how his skeleton seemed even more strong. The young man began to feel the power spread throughout his body. The guy loved to experience such emotions. He even forgot that Huan An is waiting for him. After all, the guys were going to collect flowers and return to the rest. Friends began to consider plants. All 3 flowers were of different colors, which means that the abilities were also different in themselves. Huan An proposed to give the red bud to Madame Yayun and divide the wood and gold to each other. Chen Yuan wanted to choose a golden flower. He didn't know what he would receive from him and therefore relied only on his intuition. Having gathered plants, the guys decided to get out of the cave. But before, the young man was eager to find out what the flower became useful to. The hero ordered the system to engage in the extraction of essence. Spiritual grass hung in the air, blue fire glowed around it, and then the flame began to fade. The extraction was successful. Is this the essence of the healing flower? On the palm of the Chen Yuan, there was a small light. The system clarified whether the young man wants to absorb the elixir. He agreed. And while the guy was busy with the adoption of new equipment, Yayun asked what he was doing there. But then he almost touched the tongues of flame, which suddenly covered the figure of Chen Yuan. The blonde was struck by the perfect body of his comrade. It was very cool. After the absorption of the golden essence, the guy's physique was brought to the perfect. Incredible! Ye Yun began to envy his friend greatly. Recently, competition has appeared between them. The hero still could not calm down and leave this place. He thought that the earth in which the flower grew was also filled with force. Feeling how much spiritual energy in the soil, the young man was noticeably perked up. Ye Yun was right there. The guy was closely watching the hero and decided to imitate him in everything. Having checked, Chen Yuan decided to extract useful substances from the ground. The system issued options in which there was clean soil, pure energy, and initial power. The young man was interested in the third way. It was he who seemed to the hero of the most interesting. He chose him. This luck befell Chen Yuan. The hero increased his level again and again at every step. All that the guy didn't try added skills to him. Ye Yun is tired of waiting and decided to approach a friend. But when he approached him, he almost burned again. It was clear that Chen Yuan came forward again. And this time, this fire meant that the young man switched to the second step of the spiritual kingdom. The poor Ye Yun barely restrained his emotions. How he envied his friend had no description. The guy did not understand what he did not please fate, so that she had chosen not his. But the young man did not just get the entrance to the next level, the transition was only a side effect. Chen Yuan absorbed the original energy of the flower and his whole body became stronger and stronger. Outwardly, it was clear that the young man was covered by a powerful shell, and it seems that he would become even stronger as energy is evolved. Ye Yun had a mood at all. The young man asked his friend to pinch him because everything was like a dream, a terrible dream. Then he gathered his strength and decided to ask his comrade to help him also cultivate. And Chen Yuan first wanted a friend to ask him well. And then the guys went to the exit. The path promised to be long, and our hero understood that he would have time to teach his friend all cunning techniques. Meanwhile, a giant one after another dealt with the poor students of the sect. There were many different attempts, but no one could even hurt the zombies. They understood that the mountain guard was very strong and difficult to cope with him. Someone already began to think about the escape, and as soon as the giant heard that his guests were going to leave, he decided to attack a student who was closest to him. But the blow did not touch the frightened guy. The fist of the zombie line was stopped by Madame Ye Yun. She could not endure that her people were injured. The girl ordered the detachment to begin to retreat, and she herself alone wanted to cover her students. Of course, most of the guys quickly rushed to leave the room, but there were also those who wished her to be careful. Left alone with a zombie, she thought how to attract him. She did not have a clear victory plan. And the enemy, meanwhile, did not stop attacks on her. After the next attack of the enemy, Ye Yun suddenly felt that her left hand was numb and did not move at all. And this is very bad. The beaten girl suddenly began to realize that she had previously completely underestimated the living dead and in vain thought that these were weak beings. Now the enemy almost defeated her. He could only kill the mistress, and his mission would be fulfilled on this. The guard accumulated all his strength and rushed to the poor girl. She only managed to close her with a healthy hand. Her body was imprinted in the wall. The enemy again stunned Ye Yun, and no one was in a hurry to help her. Probably this is her last battle, and her inevitable death awaits her. Then she fell to the floor, right next to the portal. It was heard that the zombie was approaching her, but she had no strength at all to move. But then, oh miracle! When she still raised her head, she saw the outlines of Chen Yuan in a magic circle. The guys finally returned back and seems to be very timely. Huan Ana did not understand at all what was happening and why the mistress was so tired. The hero hastened to help her rise. But Ye Yun asked to leave her and save her lives. It was important for her that innocent people would not suffer, because it was she who was the creator of this unfortunate expedition. Huan An sharply answered himself that he would not go anywhere. He said that only the wimp will leave his mistress in danger. At this moment, the mountain guard was about to attach to the guy. The young man fearlessly went to his meeting. But Ye Yun saw these attempts from her other students, but they were unsuccessful. Therefore, she hastened to stop the young man. Of course, Huan An overestimated his abilities. The young man barely restrained the blow of his dead enemy. The guy thought that this zombie was correctly chosen to protect the portal because he performed his duties perfectly. Then the blonde called a comrade to help because he could not be able to cope alone. At that moment, when the zombie flew at a frantic speed towards uninvited guests, Chen Yuan arrived in time. The hero stopped the enemy's powerful fist. Now the giant did not seem so invincible. Huan An has already become a fan of his friend. The young man no longer looked as surprised as in an underground cave. But Ye Yun was very surprised how an ordinary student could withstand the attack of a powerful zombie. It was very unusual for her to observe. The enemy did not like that his blow was in vain. The guard got angry. He began to randomly beat with his fists, it is not clear where. Suddenly, Huan An came ahead of our hero. The guy did not like such a maneuver at all, because the blonde was a slight target for the enemy. Chen Yuan, without choosing words, ordered a comrade to move away. But not only he prevented our hero from defeating the guard of the portal as soon as possible, Mrs. Ye Yun also did not stop distracting the young man with questions. She wanted to meet him, and the girl thought that right now, the right moment. Huan An decided to answer his friend and informed her that this was his daddy, whose name is Chen Yuan. That is how he had to turn to the hero so that he agreed to train him. Ye Yun didn't understand whether she interpreted the words of the guy correctly. This nickname seemed strange to her. Maybe it was some kind of title. Hearing this attractive word, Chen Yuan felt an incredible emotional surge. It was his personal whib. The guys were so carried away that they forgot about the mountain guard. He was in a hurry to recall his presence with another attack. Ye Yun asked Daddy to win her a little time, and then she could deal with the giant. However, this sounded strange from her mouth, and the hero asked to turn to him strictly by name. The zombie was already very close, and the lady ordered that everyone immediately united and stopped the enemy. Chen Yuan reacted to the words of the girl. He took his weapon and was one of the first to attack the enemy. The bold action liked the lady Ye Yun. Now she could kill a mountain guard. The girl accumulated her equipment and with one blow sent a ray of destructive flame at the enemy. The zombie caught fire like a torch. The fire enveloped the whole giant. They succeeded. The plan worked. Great job. But why didn't he die then? The living dead only for a while became helpless. Then the flame faded, and when it disappeared, he woke up again. It seems that the guys were happy early. The escape plan was much more successful than attempts to harm the enemy. When they got out, they could exhale. After all, the zombie was a guard of the portal, which means he could not leave his post and no one pursued the guys. But Chen Yuan felt some kind of alarm. He shared his experiences with Huan An. The hero said that danger is approaching them. The guy began to examine every corner nervously, but did not see anyone. And his comrade already saw who was watching them. At the very top level of the tower, there was a silent figure. Chen Yuan rightly interpreted his guesses. It was she, the head of the Sliper sect. A strong impulse of cadaverous poison emanated from her. This person was already familiar to the young man. The corpse knows how to talk. Apparently, she did not leave the hope that she would punish the guilty for the death of her son. But the killer was Chen Yuan. And although the guy was already stronger than at their first meeting, he was still very nervous. After all, the head of the sect is a powerful cultivator, and one of it is enough, as everyone can be dead. But fast death was not included in her plans. She wanted to make her captives die in terrible torment. Huan An asked his friend correctly. He saw that the woman was aiming at them. He really wanted to make a mistake. But not only from the height, the guys became targets. From the side, they were also expected. The mountain guard left the room and headed in their direction. In addition to this, another strong dead man joined their company. It became very sad. It is not clear how it all ends. Ye Yun intuitively grabbed her blade. The girl ordered the guys to leave someone else's territory, but Huan An was in no hurry to fulfill her decree. After all, he said earlier that he was not going to run away. The hero looked at his friend and could not understand why he was making himself a hero, because always the young man was one of the first to look for a safe place. Apparently, before Madame wanted to show himself as a brave student. The girl realized that it was useless to argue and began to attack the giant first. She did not assume that the second dead man would enter the defense of the guard. It seemed to her that the abilities that she owns is not enough. Having managed to put up the defense so that she was not wounded, she thinks over her next attacks. Chen Yuan gave a chance to the girl, but when she saw that she could not cope, she wanted to personally allow her to help her. Hearing that everything was in order with her, the hero calmed down a little. Nevertheless, the mistress ordered that they need to aim at one of the enemies. That is how, in her opinion, it was possible to defeat all the zombies. But even so, the guys were not all smooth. Chen Yuan realized that he has no choice and will have to use the effort pill. The hero took out 3 gold elixirs. He could use only 1 tablet, but the young man could not leave the team without support. Having distributed the nuclei, he expected at least gratitude. Having received a precious gift, which temporarily incites qi energy and increases the existing cultivation, the lady thought about where the usual student got such a thing. Chen Yuan quickly ate a pill. The young man left the questions without answers, deciding that in this situation, this is the last thing to think about. In order not to become victims of opponents, the guys followed his examples and swallowed their elixirs. Very quickly, Yeyun began to feel how energy was moving through his veins like a second blood. The guy liked this feeling. The rest was not the first time such an impulse, and they said nothing. After the awakening of Qi energy, the mountain guard first came from the attack. This time, all the blows that the enemy received wounded him. After a short battle, it was possible to state that the victory was on the side of the sect of immortality. But the break did not last long because the next dead man had already fled behind them. Yeyun determined that in the past the zombie was a strong cultivator, but are they now characteristic of their weapons? The mistress replied that it seems that the living dead grow their minds, because everything in life has the ability to develop and change. Having created a circle in the middle of which there was an opponent, Yeyun raked. She was interested in whether everyone was alive and were there any wounded among the guys. The blonde honestly admitted that he was ready to almost die because the young man did not think that he would be under the blow of an armed zombie first. But there was no time for bad thoughts. Yeyun began to encourage friends, saying that the enemy was strong, but they almost managed and remained just a little. Apparently, the girl had a pain shock. Chen Yuan hastened to stop her, saying that she was seriously injured and could not continue the battle. But the hero insisted that she would not force herself to continue, because it could end poorly. Somewhere aside, Huanan saying that even the lady could not fight. The guy could keep silent, but the young man knew that there was still a large pill supply in the friend's bank. Realizing the hint, Chen Yuan takes out a couple more gold nuclei and throws them to the wounded. Huanan is happy to accept a new present. Seeing that she received a healing pill of the highest rank from the hero, the girl was speechless again. After that, the organisms of the wounded quickly recovered. Today, their stomach received more healing substances than usual. Just some kind of holiday. Chen Yuan was pleased to realize that he was useful to such a respected person, and of course, he was interested to watch the reaction of his friend. Huan An, as always, admired the incredible resourcefulness of a dear comrade. The young man boasted that he had not a single scratch left, but Yeyun was picky to the healing elixir. The girl complained that her injuries did not completely heal. The hero's behavior was very strange. Previously, it was difficult to persuade him, but now he liked to arrange charitable actions. Chen Yuan took out a couple of the same pill and gave them. No one abandoned such a presentation. Having strengthened and recovered, the lady again became at the helm. She said that now they are again in service and can continue. There were 2 goals, one of which already raced with all their feet to the guys. Everything with the zombies that were on Earth was over. Here their danger has passed, but the most powerful and unpredictable figure remained, the head of the Scorching Sun sect. Chen Yuan did not allow Huanan to relax because the battle was not over yet. The military woman was still watching them from the tower. She realized that her turn had come because the rest of her servants were defeated. The head of the sect shouted vilely, and her voice as if she had come off the screens of horror films. Huan An, as the most impressionable player, honestly admitted that this scream is very scary. From her squeal, goosebumps ran on his skin. But it was not just a terrible screech, it was a cry for help. The head of the zombie thus caused an entire army of the dead. Hopelessness was read on the face of the guys. From everywhere where do not look, the living dead climbed, and there were a lot of them. Bad business. High-level cultivators infected with a dangerous virus can command low level. For the first time in a long time, Huanan again remembered the past and spoke that they needed to run. Otherwise, they would become the same. The guys looked at each other and silently began to run away. Nevertheless, they wanted to believe that enemies could not catch up with them. On the way, the hero did not forget to ask the system to extract useful elements from the dead. She asked him to make his choice in favor of one option: cultivation, memories, or a sense of self-improvement. Then the hero thought a little. After all, he did not choose the cultivation of anyone, and he became interested in whether it could really be extracted. After all, its development improves very quickly. Because of this, the physical condition is unstable. Maybe thanks to the extraction, he will calm the body a little. The guy chose the first option, and the system began unloading the necessary energy from the murdered zombies. After choosing, Chen Yuan began to absorb other people's cultivation. At that moment, pictures from the past appeared to him, but not his own. The young man saw one of the guards reached its level. Studying other people's methods of development, he solved all his problems and gained new experience. This method of obtaining improvement did not have a negative impact on the Chen Yuan consciousness, but very gently taught the guy to new abilities. While the hero was delayed, the head of the dead decided to participate and prevent them from escaping from its territory. Running the guys, they heard a woman from the tower turn to them. She told that all three would die. Hearing that she not only squeals disgustingly, but also knows how to talk, Huan An could not believe that this is possible. It gave a speed guy even more. When they still managed to break away from the persecution, the blonde began to ask how she managed to not forget the speech. He remained impressed. Ye Yun said this is not the worst, because if they do not have time to report on the uprising of the living dead of their sect, then the end of the world will come. While she was talking, Huan An noticed a small scratch on her face. The young man pointed the girl to the wound. The mistress was scared. It turns out that during a fight with a zombie, it was infected with a dangerous virus. Chen Yuan again climbed into his pocket and took out a familiar element from there. This time the girl received a nutritious pill. It is time for interrogation. Huan An asked, where did he get all these treasures from? He began to little hatred of the hero. After all these pills, Ye Yun said she was in debt to Chen Yuan. After taking the element, the wound still remained, and the daddy climbed up for the addition. Only after the second nucleus on the skin of the mistress, neither the trace remained. The guys intently examined the girl. It seems that they both fell in love with her. Ye Yun returned them from heaven to earth. It was time for them to return. Then she said that their paths diverge here. The expedition came to an end. She needed to inform the teacher about the changes in the zombie from the flaming sun. The girl thought that Chen Yuan should not go unnoticed with her abilities. Ye Yun will surely put in a word about a guy. She wanted to ask her teacher to take him to the competitions, which are held every year. Huan An connected to the conversation. He was eager to hear what his lover prepared for him, but the girl could not offer a blonde. He asked what he himself would like. The guy, not ceremony, hastened to answer that his dream was to enter the inner sect. After hearing, his mistress reminded the young man that his purpose was to rob tombs and treasury. Huan An thought it was some kind of setup. He honestly admitted that during all this time he never found anything expensive. He admitted that his skills are not as perfect as his comrade, but they are still available. But Ye Yun insisted that his father said so, and his decisions were not reviewed. On this she finished, turned, and went away. What? Chen Yuan did not disgrace? The hero had a lot of questions for a friend, but the most important was obvious, and the blonde did not think to unlock. It turns out that Ye Yun is the older sister of Huan An. The young man was not prepared to justify himself about this fact, but the hero didn't even think to be offended. Nevertheless, the guy decided to tell that his own sister would not recognize him. Chen Yuan did not consider him a stranger and decided to help to gain family trust. He supported the young man and said that the day and his sister would come. The guy said that now he should not call him daddy. Surprised, Huan An was waiting for him to finish. Realizing that the groom's place for Madame Ye Yun was abruptly freed, he voiced that from that moment he could be called son, in-law. A friend looked at him with bewilderment. He didn't know the meaning of this or the last word, but there was reunion with his family at Con, and he had no choice but to agree. Returning home, Chen Yuan looked into his yard. The young man was in a hurry to check whether his sister was in order. Opening the gate, the hero saw his native Jonah. The girl did not react to his appearance and continued to sit motionless in a stroller. The beauty was still infected, and her condition was the same as before he left on the expedition. Chun Yuan always believed that she hears him and considered it proper to tell her news and ask for advice. Only today he did not know where to start, because there were a lot of events. The young man decided to start with good news. Thereby, he wanted to protect his sister from vain experiences about his failures. He said that Madame Ye Yun will ask her teacher to accept him for the secto competition. Then he turned to face her and asked her to let him go to the annual competitions of students. The guy hastened to tell that he would finally have a chance to see the leader of the immortal sect. It was not just his desire. When this meeting occurs, he will definitely ask him, "Save the baby Jonah." Without waiting for an answer, he decides to change the topic. The hero is abruptly blown away and begins to wave his hands. He explains his actions by the fact that you need to not waste time and now start training. Then he stopped and said that in combination with many years of experience cultivating 2 elders who raised him, he will become even stronger. After 3 hours of meditation, Chun Yuan was completely exhausted. The hero analyzed the information received that his development has not improved, but combat power has reached a new level. The young man decided that if right now he was not confident in his abilities, and if the enemy was nearby, the chances of winning were minimal. Suddenly the gates opened sharply. On the threshold stood Huan Chu, who immediately began to scream towards the hero. He looked displeased. He still did not forget the slap in the face that Chen Yuan awarded him. The young man immediately guessed that he was again caused by the 4th elder for his next experiment. Only now, in my opinion, the old man mixed up the days because they agreed for a period of 3 days and only 2 passed. It was surprised that this never happened. Huan Chu was clearly out of spirit. He grabbed the guy by the clothes and began to shake him very much. He did not understand how the usual experimental dare to ask questions. The hero hastened to set off as soon as possible. He no longer needed an explanation of the messenger. They said to go, then go. But Huan Chu saw a stroller behind the guy, in which the helpless Jonah was sitting. He complimented the girl that she is really beautiful, as everyone tells. A curious guest without demand approached her. He was interested to consider her better. He did not hear dissatisfied statements from the Chen Yuan and continued to reduce the distance. And then he sharply turned to the indignant guy. Huan Chu directly told him that he would not intervene. But the owner of the house was very serious. The guy warned that he would not dare to approach the girl. Suddenly, the guest rebelled. He began to shout that the hero had no right to raise his voice on him because he had not even done anything. The messenger naively believed that Chen Yuan could not do anything to him and harm something. He continued his path to the stroller. The hero decided to warn him for the last time. He promised that if he dares at least to touch the girl with his finger, then he would break his hands. Huan Chu's patience was running out. He did not understand where the guy has so much courage to threaten a student. Still, Chen Yuan was an ordinary servant. Now the messenger was not only going to consider the beauty of the girl, but also to carry out some of his male fantasies. When the hand almost touched the face of the young beauty, the student again heard threats from the hero, but now he did not react in any way. Chun Yuan simply decided to recall that Huan Chu has the last chance, but the young man realized that he had already allowed this insolent and switched to action from words. Something quickly flashed near the messenger, and then the blood sprinkled onto the sitting Jonah. The guy not just wounded his enemy, he decided to deprive him of his hand. Huan Chu did not believe that this did happen. He fell to his knees. Gradually, the young man began to experience pain, and the hero at first silently watched the wounded, and then said that he simply had no choice left. This was the only effective way to stop the arrogant guest. Chun Yuan has not finished yet. The young man stood with a blade in his hand. He was going to kill the student of the sect so that his fantasies would not be harmful to anyone else. But the young man began to shout that the hero would not dare to do anything to him because his plans were to punish the wrong servant of his teacher. Huan Chu turned sharply to the young man and rushed in his direction. He wanted to kill Chen Yuan. "I do not use weapons." It was a bad idea because, having met with a young man's sword, a student of the 4th elder was again injured. Once on the ground, Huan Chu was shocked. He took a breath and asked what level of cultivation our hero occupies. Where did he get such a force? But Chen Yuan thought that the villain did not have the right to know such a truth. Instead of answering his question, he sentenced him to execution. Direct! And then he last waved to Huan Chu. But suddenly he began to pray him for mercy, said that the elder would not forgive him for this. Chen Yuan was no longer afraid of anyone. He completed this fight and the student fell dead. The hero simply defended the only thing he had in this world and believed that he had acted correctly. Then the young man began to extract his cultivation. But it turned out that he was one of the weak students of the sect, so his technology would not help the hero. It remained then to choose memories. Without wasting time, the guy began familiarization with the pictures from the past. But the memory was also useless information for him. One by one, he replaced the scene from the past life of the murdered Huan Chu. Nothing was suitable until the hero came across the fourth elder. It is exactly what was connected with him that can help him. The guy saw that the old man's health was very bad and he did not have long to live. This was quite enough, and he decided to finish the extraction. A little later, the young man went to meet with the sage. He was already approaching the residence of the fourth elder. When Chen Yuan went inside, it was clear that the old man had long been dead. The man turned and asked, "Where Huan Chu?" The hero quickly replied that he had gone somewhere. Then he began to recall that the young man checked his invented pills for 3 years. The hero agreed with his statement. The old man continued to speak. He said that an ordinary person would have problems or adverse reactions to drugs, and the guy was all right. Chen Yuan was not aware of what he was driving. The sage heard a compliment that only thanks to his deep knowledge and instructions, the hero remained alive. Then the man turned to the boiler and asked if the subject guessed what tablet he was preparing for him this time. The elder said that now there should be no mistakes. He used all his spiritual healing herbs, which he kept for a long time. Chen Yuan didn't worry at all. He even cheered up a man and said that he believes in his success. At that moment, when the young man thought that the old man was plotting something, a bowler opened and could see his next creation. In appearance, the tablet was no different from the previous ones. The fourth elder did not hide admiration. He did not stop screaming that everything was ready and laughed out loud at the end. When the pill was in the hand of its creator, Chen Yuan was able to take it closer. Now she seemed to him some strange. The man finished admiring the energy core and switched to the hero. He told him to come closer. The educational tone changed sharply to the gentle. The elder stroked the hero on the shoulder and began to tell how good he was, a young and active boy. And then Chen Yuan realized that the old man really thought something. The man rushed the guy. He wanted him to swallow the long-awaited pill. But the young man pulled time as he could. He asked the sage, "Is it necessary to do this right now?" The fourth elder lost patience. He asked if the young man refuses to try the drug. But Chen Yuan did not want to offend him. He just really did not want to eat her. The hero was more and more worried that something was definitely wrong here. "You can't try it." The system was caused to help extract a pill. 2 options, essence and toxin, were announced. The guy chose to extract toxic substances. While he was doing this, the sage continued to watch the experimental and still persistently continued to rush him. Finally, the hero finished and put a pill in his mouth. After that, the elder laughed again loudly. He was pleased that Chen Yuan obeyed his order. And here something inexplicable began. The sage said that from that moment the young man is completely in his power, while his words had no sense. Chen Yuan began to wave his hands randomly. He did not understand what the man was talking about. "Oh, and he hit!" At first, the young man thought that the teacher did not work out again. But after a short period of time, he began to feel that the elder's voice was moving away. The man promised that Chen Yuan would not even think to worry, because he knows exactly how to dispose of the hero's body and abilities. After these words, the hero began dizziness, and he fell to the ground unconscious. Sometime later, the young man woke up. He did not immediately remember why he had a sudden malaise and for what reason his head was buzzing. While he was looking around, he heard a familiar voice. The young man immediately changed his eyes. Not knowing what to expect, the hero began to crawl back, because his legs did not obey at all. He decided to ask the elder why he feels so bad. But the man replied that the young man stops resisting. He definitely controlled his body against his will. The sage admitted that he was waiting for this day. Nevertheless, the exhausted hero demanded an explanation. Chen Yuan was lying in an empty small room and did not know how to choose from here. And the elder ordered that the young man lay, because he would not be able to escape. Then he raised his hand up, after which the activation began. A bright light appeared in the room. Around the hero, a magic circle began to appear, which looked like a portal. It consisted of witchcraft formulas and symbols. Chen Yuan again heard a loud laughter. Finally, the fourth elder voiced his desire. With the help of a guy, he was going to extend his life. Ah, is that what he finds out? Now it was possible to finish everything. Surprise appeared in the old man's eyes. How is it possible? The teacher was preparing an attack. Chen Yuan no longer had to pretend. The young man rushed to attack the old man. The man fell from the blow to the floor. He did not understand how the hero could move. It turns out that his plan did not work. But the young man was not going to explain anything. Instead, he hit the man again. This time, the victim began bleeding. Now the body of the elder hit the wall. He felt acute pain, but could not compare how the guy could still have such power. Chen Yuan began to threaten the sage that his power had long been exhausted and it was time to give way to younger teachers. He also recalled that he did not stay long. The fourth elder was shocked. How did the experimental person be able to find out his secret? The hero decided to reveal the truth to the man and replied that Huan Chu told about it. The sage barely restrained himself. He could not even think that the faithful student would become a traitor. And the hero thought that these unsuccessful pills caused a man to lose his vitality. Well, now the old man had nothing to hide, and he admitted that large holes were formed in his aura and his previous force was lost. Then he said that he had a few years left and maybe two. Chen Yuan wanted to hear the whole truth. He realized that the old man wanted to take possession of his young body. But the man said that at first Huan Chu wanted to use because at first the young man did not suit him. But then he revised his decision because physical training became much better and he did not even die of poison. Hearing that he had long become a target, the guy decided that he would not just allow his tormentor to die. And the elder was not going to give up just like that. The next moment, he asked if the young student would have enough strength to cope with the demonic power. Now, Chen Yuan saw that the teacher sold himself to the devil. The elder could no longer hide. He already didn't give a damn what method he would achieve his goal. After all, the methods of cultivating demons allow you to become even stronger. The secret technique of obsession becomes available to them. The man only regretted that he had not thought of giving Bees his soul before. The guy again heard this terrible laugh, and then the elder moved away and he headed towards the young man. The fights were not to avoid. Then Chen Yuan again spoke so that the sage had already reconciled with his death and prepared for the attack. The fourth elder considered his words nonsense because no one is able to resist his devilish power. The man was going to penetrate the hero's mind. He directed his hand from which magical energy came out, which began to fill the room. Around the Chen Yuan began to thicken this color smoke. It became difficult to breathe. The hero decided to take advantage of the flaming palm. The old man patiently waited for his energy to crush the young man, but saw that the magical field began to weaken. Then there was a split. What is this? The hero's skills defeated demonic power. Now Chen Yuan has become the leading in this complex battle. The old man was thrown back to the exit. The man found the strength to rise from such a powerful blow of a blazing palm. He was surprised when the hero managed to find out this technique. The man said that the sect of the glowing sun has long been destroyed, and the cultivators are dead. But how then did Chen Yuan study this culture of martial arts? The old man thought that the young man also sacrificed many to get these abilities. Now the sage even more wanted to get the soul of the hero. Chen Yuan could not stand the blow from the enemy. Nevertheless, the level of cultivation of the teacher was a step above him. The guy urgently needed to come up with a plan and correctly use all the trump cards that the young man owned. The elder did not want to wait any longer. He made a Chen Yuan compliment that before the man did not think how difficult it would be to kill the hero. Demonic energy flew towards the guy who managed to put up the defense. Faced, their strength met. The shield of the young man could not stand it. But Chun Yuan was not at a loss. Having lost the defense, he immediately took advantage of his technique, which always saved him. The old man was pierced by a powerful young energy that passed through, and then an explosion occurred. The hero did not expect a miracle from his protection, because despite many extracts of ki energy, he was still weak, but he still stood the elder's blow. When the smoke began to dissipate and it was possible to consider the figure of the teacher, the guy asked if he would still make attempts to attack. The sage replied that the young man to take possession of his soul was his mistake, and the man asked him to save his life. In return, he was ready to give everything that the young man would wish. Chun Yuan was preparing to kill the elder. He decided that the old man had betrayed their teachings and he had to pay for this act. The hero did not like to negotiate with demons. The guy's blade swung and already flashed in a dangerous proximity from the elder's neck. The man began to tell that he was not the only one who sided with the demons, and if he dies, demons would learn about it. The young man realized that the enemies would look for him in order to avenge the death of his man and began to ask who else became a traitor. The old man laughed. He saw that the guy was scared. The man continued his psychological technique. He began to tell the guy that if he decides to be an obedient boy, the teacher will tell him about the secrets of demonic cultivation. But the sword still remained on the old man's neck. What is the fact that Chen Yuan has mercy on the sage? The young man will still find out everything he wants by extracting. Then the hero nevertheless removed a sharp blade, but it was only a deceased maneuver. The elder exhaled, thinking that he managed to arrange a guy. Chun Yuan just decided that he would break his ribs. Having hit the man in the chest, he fell to the floor and did not move anymore. Now, one traitor was less. At this moment, the hero thought that now he should become even stronger to cope with the consequences. The young man wondered what his killed could reward useful. But he did not even have time to call the system. Demonic smoke began to appear over the lifeless body of the teacher. The deceased disappeared right before his eyes. It became unpleasant to smell. The guy hurried to the extraction process. There were only two methods, and the hero chose a variant of cultivation. This brought him the second stage of the kingdom. He was about to finish, and just the teacher's body disappeared without a trace. That's how the man was gone. Chun Yuan again thought that he had exactly inflated trouble. Somewhere far, high in the mountains, in secret from human eyes, there was a cave. In the depths, there was a secret entrance. There, in secret from human eyes, a young man was sitting. Demonic energy was spinning around him. He stood up when he felt that the aura of the fourth elder had disappeared. Who killed him? Have they found them? Some time later, magical smoke flew into the residence of the murdered old man in a thin wind. He was the same person from the cave. Now he was at the scene of the crime to conduct his own investigation. He realized that most likely someone killed the old man, and it is quite possible that this is a man from the sect. But the young man with devilish eyes could not see who killed the man. It was not so important because he already decided that he would find a killer at all costs. After that, the caveman began to disappear. His image evaporated from the room in the same way as he appeared. Chen Yuan has already returned home. The guy did not waste time and began to train to protect his sister. The girl still did not move when her eyes lit up. The hero was busy and did not see how something began to leave Jonah. Huanan. This became an obstacle to the Chen Yuan yard so that the essence completely leaves the hero's sister. The young man interrupted the training and asked, what happened to his comrade? But the blonde answered, can he not visit his daddy for no reason? But Chen Yuan, as soon as I heard this magic word, I immediately realized that the comrade had come for a reason. And the blonde could not restrain himself for a long time so as not to tell that in fact there is one thing. Hearing that the hero can be slyly used in other people's interests. After the refusal, the guest's mood worsened sharply. The young man defiantly said that now friendship is likely to be the end because the hero already has a high level of abilities. Then, Chen Yuan could not stand his whims and asked to tell what led him to him. Huanan was inspired and said that the grand contest of the external sect began, and Madame Yeyun asked him to convey this to him. The hero wanted to know if he could take part, or was he called as a spectator? A friend assured the guy that his sister promised to take care of this. Arriving at the square, the guys saw that a lot of people responded. Some came to just look at the competitions, and all because Madame Yeyun was also going to participate. She could immediately join the sect, but instead decided to go honestly. It remained to choose who she will be in the team because the competition needs to be held 3 people. The girl was desirable for everyone, but no one dared to speak with her first. Among those present were more bold guys. One of the best students invited her to join his team. The mistress refused. She considered that their union would certainly achieve excellent results, but this, in her opinion, is dishonest. And then Ye-yun generally shocked his interlocutor. She admitted that she already has a team, they just linger a little. The guy reacted abruptly to her words. He said nothing, of course, but thought that the girl was very arrogant and it would be a big minus to her. Meanwhile, some kind of confusion took place in the crowd, and all because friends tried their best to go through a huge queue. The blonde decided to speed up the process and shouted that they were already in a team with Mrs. Yun. Oh, his long tongue will someday bring them to trouble. In the crowd, of course, were found by those who, like them, wanted to get into the star team, and friends faced the resistance of these people. Huanan was very serious. He did not understand why they were starting to laugh over his words. Someone began to shout that they were familiar with the guys. Then they began to discuss that ordinary workers decided to participate in a traditional competition. In these minutes, the guys heard a bunch of insults and ridicule in their address. But when the topic was affected, that their impudence has no limit, and they lie that they are in a team with the mistress, the blonde could not stand it. The young man was about to start a fight, and he already didn't care that he could be expelled from the competition forever for this. Fortunately, the girl saved friends from an unwanted battle. The mistress ordered everyone to part and let the guys pass. The crowd fell silent sharply and followed its instruction. Chun Yuan calmly continued his way, but his comrade needed a lot of time to calm his nervous system. Seeing who the girl was exchanged for, the best student of the sect began to insult the guys. He called them boys on the run. For these words, Huanan was going to immediately call him to justice, but the brother was prevented by Ye-yun. She said that Bai Yu calmed down because she had already warned the teacher that friends would take part in the competition along with all the participants. Hearing that this is a special case, the guy still could not calm down. He wondered what level each participant in her team occupies. But she was not going to report to him and only put the young man in place, saying that this was not his business. And then the girl again said that it is enough for him to know the information that they are her team. Bai Yu was very angry. He sincerely did not understand what these servants better than him. Ye-yun still continued to protect her friends. She quickly lowered the interlocutor from heaven to earth, saying that he sets himself too high. Even after such a shame, Bai Yu still continued to overestimate herself. And then the girl honestly admitted that even if they had not participated, she would still not unite with him. It was a blow below the belt. The guy thought he could actually be as bad as she claims? But they did not finish, because a strong wind rose and those present felt powerful energy. The stone gate never opened, but on the roof there was a look similar to the famous teacher. The eyes of the guys rushed precisely on him because everyone was waiting for the appearance of this man. Behind the stone gates there is a secret kingdom. After the entrance, the participant begin to receive points for the murder of monsters. Only the best students who scored the most points will be able to enter the sect. And in the end, he added that there are much fewer places than last year. Then the master ordered everyone to divide into 3 people. An important condition was that if the murder of the enemy will occur, more than 3 participants will not be counted. Finally, the man fell silent, and this meant that time came. When everyone rushed to the entrance to the secret kingdom, Bai Yu decided to give Madame the last chance and again asked if she changed his mind to change the team. The answer was negative. The guy worried about her and said that these loafers would only prevent her from achieving success. Friends silently listened to how they were drowned. They were tired of listening from a quarrel and that they are groundlessly offended. But Ye-yun asked the guy to worry better for his candidacy. Then she turned and ordered her friends to follow her. The gates never opened. Instead of this, the aura of the guys turned into a bright ray, which penetrated the stone. In such a strange way, all participants were teleported into the secret kingdom and could go in search of monsters. In another world, everything was no different from reality. The guys were in the forest. Everything seemed ordinary to them. But Huan An still felt that there is a lot of spiritual energy. They stood silently and peered into dense forest thickets. The secret kingdom seemed to them differently. Where are the monsters? Where is the danger? Before they had time to think about the upcoming difficult battles, a wild animal suddenly attacked a blonde. The attacker was more like a year old than an ordinary monkey. Ye Yun managed to injure the beast, and he did not harm her brother in any way. Chen Yuan looked at the corpse of a demonic monkey and said that this is not the most serious opponent. But then the scoreboard appeared on the team on which the account appeared. The fact that they are watching and will honestly conduct the score of the points I liked the Huan Chu. While the rest were busy listening to additional instructions, the hero decided to take advantage of the moment and extract a racial talent from the murdered beast. But the young man understood that the monkey scream was very weak, but he thought that he could be pumped. At this time, the lady noticed a strange movement in the forest, as if someone was approaching them. It turned out that this animal was not one. There were a lot of monsters. The guys had a doubt whether they can cope with so many humanoid animals. It was decided to retreat because the chimpanzees became more and more. But the guys ran away very slowly. One of the monsters caught up with Ye Yun, and he's about to attack the girl from the back. She felt that she had become a target. The mistress was not at a loss, and turning to the enemy already attacked the striker with a blade with a blow. The animal was mortally wounded, but she was not alone in a fight with the monkey. Chen Yuan was also engaged in the extermination of the pursuers. The hero came the worst of all, killing one beast, the second almost attacked him. This endless cycle began to bother him. Time passed, and the monkeys did not end. They gradually left the forest and then replenished the mountains of the dead. Huan An almost died of horror. The poor man shouted that the escape is a good plan, but the monsters still continue to pursue. The mountains were visible ahead, and the team decided to hide there, believing that the animals would not move away from their home so far. It was decided to climb the highest stone and protect the perimeter, so that, as soon as the monkeys began to rise behind the guys, not to let them climb them. But the rock did not become an obstacle to demonic monsters, and the first beast killed Ye Yun, cutting his way to the guys. Huan An, as always, was full of questions. Right now he was interested in, are the monkeys going to leave? But Chen Yuan upset his comrade. The hero replied that it seems that they will have to kill them all. Only then the path would be free. Demonic monkeys all walked and went in an endless stream, and it seemed that nothing could stop them. The guys were pleased only that all the corpses were correctly taken into account by the Glass's calculation program, and it could be hoped that they would be able to score a sufficient number of points to get a place in the sect. An hour has passed, and Chen Yuan noted that the enemies had become noticeably less. They are very tired because it would be better for them to fight a stronger king than with countless pawns. The monkeys were no longer so willing to go to the guys, seeing that many of their groups were dead. Animals decided not to touch them anymore. Huan An gently looked down. The guys saw that they finally managed to scare the enemy. But Ye Yun said not to rejoice so early. After all, they are trapped, and monkeys simply will not let them leave here. Then her brother again spoke that nevertheless, we could assume that they won. After all, the guys managed to collect many points. But the sister said that for one dead beast, they give only 1 point. And for the king of monkeys, you can get at least 100. The guy was very upset. It looks like they were not aimed at those. And only Chen Yuan was silent and not particularly upset. The hero was busy increasing the talent of monkey screaming. The guy extracted their skill from the dead demonic monkeys and thereby pumped his new techniques. The guy stopped only when the system said that the talent was increased to the highest rank. Chen Yuan was more than pleased with himself. What's happening? The guys cannot move, but behind someone else's energy was already felt. This meant that someone was approaching them. Well, whoever remembered, he appeared. From the side of the forest, a powerful king of demonic monkeys came out. He wide opened his mouth and, with his cry, created a funnel into which the guys had to get into. Huan An immediately grabbed his ears. His head was terribly ill with ultrasound. And Ye Yun introduced the guys to the main leader of the animals. She said that he was not quite a king, but his racial talent is strong. A huge animal was in no hurry to approach them, but from his scream, other demonic monkeys rushed to attack the guys again. Now the enemy was stronger because the ultrasound of the leader did not allow people to concentrate on the battle. Ye Yun ordered to fight the loss of the pulse. She realized that they would either lose at the very beginning of the competition or break through this horde of monkeys. The guys heard well what the team captain demanded from them, but it was very difficult to fulfill. Their condition was as if they were somewhere in zero gravity. It seemed as if their blows slowed down 100 times. Huan An was already wounded by the enemy in the shoulder area. The young man said that their strength was weakening. The lady heard her brother. She knew how to stop this sound and generally drive out demonic monkeys. It was a hint that everyone understood. The young man immediately asked if it was risky too much, but the girl calmly replied that they had no other choice. Then Chen Yuan came to the fore. He said that he was tired of small monkeys. The guy was about to jump from the stone where they stood. The hero, without warning, fell out of his place and headed towards the leader. He himself was going to kill the leader of the animals. Huan An was very scared for his expensive rug. Out of habit, he began to dissuade the young man, but he was already too far to hear his screams, "Come back." Chen Yuan began to clear his way. With every killed animal, the guy became closer to the main enemy, and his comrade began to panic. The young man began to ask his sister what to do now because they should help the poor guy. Then, he generally did something that he would never repeat. Huan An decided to go the path of his friend and jumped off the stone. The hero's forces ended, but he still did not reach his main goal. There were still many small targets that quickly fell dead from the wave of the blade of the young man. The leader of the monkeys suddenly fell silent. He saw that a stranger was going to him and began to hire in the light air to kill a new wave. Huan An and Ye Yun froze in anticipation of what would happen now. The girl said that the hero could not cope with this attack. The guys prompted the young man to dodge the ultrasound waves. But he wanted to check whose racial talent is more powerful. The duel began at the same time, and so far, it was too early to call someone the winner. Observers did not know that Chen Yuan was able to use the skill of Monkey Scream. Everyone was very surprised, and the hero's friend was not so worried about his friend. Now he thought when he only managed to study this animal skill, the leader did not hold the enemy's attack and decided that he would escape the right decision. But the guy did not let him hide. Then Chen Yuan again released a couple of bestial screams. From this, the king of monkeys was numb, and the young man decided that it was time to finish. At first he said, then he did, clearly. Observers did not understand how quickly everything happened. After the death of the leader of the demonic monkeys, the system charged 20 points to Chen Yuan. Well, not bad. Huan An hastened not to congratulate his comrade, but to find out where did he get the skill of Monkey Scream. However, the hero was tired and said that he would answer him, but later. In addition, there were still animals who stopped temporarily from the loss of the ultrasound of their leader, but it was still clear that they would soon resume the battle again. And then, Chen Yuan scored in light air and reproduced a repulsive animal scream. Monkeys began to behave unpredictably. Their movements became chaotic. Some individuals immediately hid in the forest. Huan An alienatedly cut the enemies. He said without stopping that when it ends, it is an interesting story of acquiring a racial skill. And Ye Yun ordered his brother to stop being distracted. Otherwise, he could again be wounded by one of the opponents. It's all over! The guy was still satisfied because he managed to earn as many as 65 points. After the battle ended, the hero hastened to extract the talent of animals, and now his abilities had the development of the deepest rank. Now the lady could completely approach the hero. She admired that he took possession of racial abilities. Chen Yuan was pleased to hear such pleasant words. He was a little embarrassed and said that the girl was flattering him. The mistress quickly finished this conversation because she did not want the distance between them to be reduced. She said that it is time to go further and score glasses. The team decided to return to the forest, and when they approached, they heard a noise that something was definitely happening there. A crowd of participants gathered around one monster. Each team stood in line to test their strength. Ye Yun introduced the guys to the three-headed hellish dog, nicknamed Cerberus. He occupied the high level of the King of Demons. The guys stood silently and watched. They were interested in who would be able to defeat the enemy and how much would be given for his death. One participant chopped off one of the heads of a demonic dog with his blade. All those present froze. The young man looked tired and rumpled, but seeing that the dog's head was rolling like a ball, he was delighted. After all, the young man was sure that he did. So why does the system not have glasses? It turned out that, having lost one head, the monster immediately grew a new one. Remembering his offender, the hellish dog deprived the young man of the upper body. The team lost one player. The guys were shocked by what they saw. How is it possible? No one expected that such an unpleasant surprise awaited them. How to defeat such a monster? Someone from the crowd told rumors that Cerberus can be defeated only by chopping off all his heads at once in one fell swoop. Meanwhile, the hellish dog swallowed his enemy and was ready to choose someone else. However, all participants were of the same opinion that no one could do this because it is difficult. Instead of finding a solution, it was clear that for the death of the monster you could get a lot of points. The guys began to run and look for where to hide. Noticing a strong movement, Cerberus began to attack running people. He managed to swallow several guys who came across him in the way. Panic began. All participants fled to the forest. They decided that it would be safer there. Ye Yun watched the monster fleeing them. The girl was afraid, but not bewildered, and ordered the guys from her team to hide too. And she herself hit one of the heads of the frantic Cerberus. The lady was going to detain the beast. Many recognized the sister of Ye Yun. They were glad to see her and understood that she was with them at the same time. After all, everyone was heard about her strength and the fact that very often she had to sacrifice herself despite the danger if only others remained alive. The mistress heard her brother urgently told her to run. The young man was seriously worried about his relative. Ye Yun guessed that the monster was aiming at her. This time, she managed to dodge the enemy's attack, but will she get it again? The guys, as usual, did not obey their team leader. Chen Yuan proposed a plan that was to kill the hellish Cerberus together. The girl liked this idea. She did not even think that the guys would offer it. It seemed to her to be afraid. Huan An thought it was unrealistic. He recalled that it would be possible to defeat the monster if you decapitate it at the same time. He heard that everyone except him was ready. Then the young man began to shake with horror. The guy frantically waved his hands and talked about why his opinion was not taken into account. Of course, he was against it. However, at first he was supported by Chen Yuan, who said that he should already begin to believe in himself and his strength. Otherwise, why did he need a place in the sect if he is not going to fight for victory? As soon as the hero finished, the sister of Ye Yun spoke. She encouraged a relative, saying that everything would be in order with the young man. However, when Huan An again looked at the monster, who was running frantically in search of a new victim, it did not seem at all that he would survive after a fight with such a beast. The guys waited until the demonic dog approached them as close as possible. The first to demolish the head of Ye Yun. Blood poured a river. Cerberus's face rolled, publishing the last dog screams. But the monster regenerated too quickly. The animal again appeared in front of the guys with 3 heads. Chen Yuan said they could not cope with him with one wave. The rest of the participants could not believe that they were trying to kill the hellish dog. Most of the audience came to the conclusion that they are ended. The participants saw that in their team, Madame Ye Yun, and this means that she would take over the others and they will not have problems. Meanwhile, Chen Yuan took the initiative on himself. He said that they began to attack. The hero rushed towards the enemy. The girl also went on the attack. Only one Huan An reluctantly followed the example of the rest. However, the guy still remained with his opinion that he was not ready for battle. Ye Yun first chopped off her head. She rushed the rest, otherwise the beast will resume the loss. Chen Yuan approached the animal. The hero chose the closest muzzle, then the guy quickly demolished his head. There was only one Huan An. The young man followed the example of the rest and, wrapped in his blade, hit the dog's skull. But the animal managed to dodge. Huan An honestly admitted that he did not work out. There was one head, and until the beast returned the rest back, it was still possible to defeat him. All the time has passed. The dog was healed and was just as aggressive again. Now the monster knew who her opponent was. The Bai Yu team stood nearby. The guy spoke that maybe Ye Yun had already regretted that she had chosen such weak participants. Everyone saw that they did not succeed. Huan An heard it, and it became even harder for him. But Chen Yuan was about to repeat the attack. However, his comrade said that he could not and asked him to be behind and not touch him. The hero realized that without another support, nothing would work out. Then the young man approached his friend and said that his daddy believes in him. Then he asked that the young man would not let him down. Huan An perplexed that this happened to Chen Yuan, but his words gave him unrealistic power and he himself prepared for the attack. Our hero ordered that the blow should be only on his team. The guys were not going to stop and gave themselves another chance. When the hellish dog leveled off and outlined his victim, Chen Yuan shouted that now is the time to attack. The mistress perfectly followed orders. She completely trusted in the decree of her brother's friend, and Huan An, with incredible power, waved to the monster. The guy shouted that Daddy would be proud of him. The second attempt was successful. They did it. All 3 heads of the demonic dog were chopped off. The rest of the participants noticed that the 3-headed dog was dead. However, there were those who said that they were still lucky. But Chen Yuan let everyone speak out, because still the majority envied them. Each of them received 150 points. Huan An was happy, because now he was rich. His sister thought that she was guaranteed a place in the sect. Those teams that did not look at how the fate of the 3-headed dog would end in search of a more suitable victim. The Baiyu team fought with the tiger. In appearance, the predator looked completely believable, only in size was much larger than usual. The guys were not difficult to kill the enemy. For the victory, the system credited 100 points to the team. After that, the best student recalled that right now he would be interested in finding out how the battle with the 3-headed dog had ended with his competitors. The young man was sure that he and the guys were definitely leading in positions. Bai Yu believed that they had no equal, but one of the participants said that he should not worry about the mistress because she herself is to blame for united with the boys. He asked to look at the situation from the other side that their team had more points. Bai Yu decided to listen to the advice. He was not stupid and perfectly understood that no one could compare with them. The time has come for preliminary results. The program has been displayed on the screen who takes the first place. The Bai Yu team was only on the second. His team began to be indignant. At first, it seemed like it was someone's unsuccessful joke. This is just a shame, because they enter the top 5 of the best students of the sect. But how then did others get around them? Meanwhile, the team leader was very angry. He had only one explanation of such events. It turns out that the girl is endlessly strong. But the guys were disagreeing with his conclusions because Ye Yun could not cope alone. But if this turns out to be true, then no one can compare with her. And Bai Yu was able to answer this. He told the guys that each time the monster is only stronger, and if the girl is really the only capacity of a participant, then she will not be able to keep leadership for a long time. The fact that the girl soon could not cope with the enemy raised the fighting spirit of the team very much, and the guys went to continue the competition. The participants in the competition awaited the following task. They were invited to go along a long wooden bridge and get to the island, which is located in the center of the lake. For the fulfillment of all conditions, the player will receive 100 points. The guys carefully read the rules, and everyone noted that everything is accessible and understandable. It seemed that everything was very simple, but it was embarrassed by how many points would eventually be credited. The amount was equal to the points that can be obtained for the murder of a strong monster. The first people appeared very quickly. The guy alone passed less than half of the bridge. The lake was calm, no waves and winds. But suddenly, a high wave rose, which began to download a wooden structure. The reservoir, as if he had come to life as soon as the participants stood on the bridge. And then something inexplicable happened. A high wave washed away the uninvited guest. There was something else interspersed with water. The poor fellow threw back at the beginning of his path, directly at the feet of the rest of the participants and members of his team. Something unknown got rid of the young man, in whose eyes the word froze. Help. The guys looked at each other, and unexpectedly for all, Huan An became interested in the task. The young man said he wants to try. However, Chen Yuan began to be careful and said that he was really scared. Ye Yun began to reason. She saw that the bridge would not be as easy as with demons and strong monsters. Suddenly, the stone on which the rules were displayed again turned on. The reward for the test has changed. Now whoever crosses the bridge will receive 150 points, Huanan thought, while he decided to wait with passage and wait a little more. Now he was engaged in unraveling. At this time, the fact that the award grew by 50 points greatly excited all the participants. Many rushed to the bridge, afraid to lose such an opportunity. Nevertheless, the main goal of everyone was to become a student of the sect. But the same fate awaited them as the first. Wave an unknown green ray. It seemed that no one to cross, and it was worth refusing to save your life. Yayun remained standing still. She decided not to bother and thought that no one to cross and it was better to leave. But her brother still decided to take a chance. The girl stopped him. She called his decision frivolous, but in response, she heard that she should not worry about him. The guy was sure that he could. The monster is located in the center of the lake, and you just need to slowly and quietly go. According to his plan, he should not have been heard. Carefully. This time, the enemy did not stay into the water. He decided to seem to everyone. He guarded the bridge to the island of hellish water snakes. The monster instantly approached his next victim and attacked a guy with an open mouth. Chun Yuan could not see what happened. A strong wave interfered with him very much. Immediately after this, the snake disappeared. There was nobody on the bridge. Where did he go? Was he surprised to dodge? Yayun reassured the hero. She asked if he listened carefully to her friend. Leaving Huan An, he hinted at that was going to use the technique of the Tomb of Tomb. Chun Yuan was amazed at such a resourcefulness of his comrade. He did not think that the guy would put himself so high. Huan An was in the blow. The young man praised himself as he had not thought of before. After all, it worked. He managed to fool the monster. The young man dodged a deadly blow and after some time appeared from the pit right on the island. The task was completed by the second and third place not provided. Huan An returned to the team. Chen Yuan called a friend a lucky one. But this was not enough for him. The guy thought about the fact that now he should be called Daddy. The hero asked if he knew the meaning of this word, to which I heard the answer that in his understanding, this is a cool person, like a father. This was very ridiculed by Chen Yuan. The young man did not go into details and decided to agree with his opinion. Let him feel completely the winner. But the hell was not finished. The team decided to combine their strength and the three of them to kill the monster. For this death, the program counted the guys 180 points. Yayun told the guys that they are becoming stronger. Suddenly, a fight began near them. Turning around, they saw that a demonic mountain eagle flew out of the forest. The bird was injured and wanted to avoid its death. Behind the monster, a team of competitors appeared. Bai Yu and your friends pursued a wounded predator. He almost got caught. A couple of exact blows and the monster fell dead. The system made public that the guys received 120 points. While Bai Yu was happy that no one would break into the leaders of the competition except them, he noticed that Yayun was very close. What are they doing here? He certainly needed to know this. The young man sent his friend to recognize everything in more detail. Just at that time, the ladies' team was going to leave, as a young man ran up to them. He smiled slyly and asked not to rush. He said he wanted to talk to her. However, she was not tuned to dialogue. On the other hand, the second participant in the enemy team was already standing. His participation was to bring her out. He began to say offensive things that she was worried that she would not overtake them in points due to two useless servants. Huan An. The young man wanted to clarify who gave them the right to insult him and Chen Yuan for no special reason. But he replied that everyone knows everything for a long time as young men do only dirty work. He did not hear the interlocutor and continued. He said that the squad glasses are falling precisely because of them and that he and the second participant have no points at all. Huan An decided to put a competitor once and for all. The guy asked, what if his team together and separately scored more points than they? He climbed to fight. The young man proposed to voice his points, and if they are higher than him, then everyone will call him Daddy. However, a participant in another team was afraid of such a reaction and asked to move away from him. Huanan felt that the guys became not so confident in themselves. But there was no road back. They had to agree. It remains to wait for the table of leaders in the teams and individual classes of participants. In the first place was the Yeyun team. In the second, the Bai Yu team. Now it was clear that all the words were a lie. How is it possible? However, even this did not seem true to them. Huan An reminded of their persuasion, the guys did not want to accept such a truth. They saw an intermediate result and the entire team, and not one participant. The rivals claimed that the young man only boasts and they should only thank her sister for pulling them all. Otherwise, they would have been in the next world for a long time. Finally, a table of assessment of every young man appeared, and the name Huan An appeared on the pedestal. Some did not imagine who it was. Bai Yu realized that Ye Yun is still not the strongest, but the young man realized that if her team is in the first place, then the participant leading the glasses is also from her environment. Huan An laughed and said that it was to call him like that. But here the guy ran into a denial. Everyone froze. It turned out that Ye Yun ranks third. From this, it became mysteriously inexplicably. Then Huan An introduced those present with the bronze medalist, who waved his hands with his hands like a celebrity. 2 boys on the run occupied the upper lines of the rating of the main competition of the sect. The enemy's team simply refused to believe it, but Huan An was already eager to feel his whib. An agreement? There is an agreement. However, I heard again a bunch of insults addressed to me. Bai Yu hastened to stop the young man. He said that it was time for them to go and the competition is not over yet. Still can change. Huan An blocked their way. The young man had already felt like a daddy in advance and said that until they follow his orders, forbidden to leave. For the first time in his life, Bai Yu wanted to finish the quarrel first, but the young man himself hinted that the fights could not be avoided. Huan An began to say that the interlocutor cannot recognize the defeat, so he chooses his fists. Now there was Ye Yun. She intercepted the Bai Yu blow in time. She said that he would not dare to touch them. The young man didn't understand why she protects her servants, but she replied that he had left them not far from them. Bai Yu ordered his children to teach them a lesson, and they seemed to be waiting for his teams. The guys gladly agreed to a mass fight. One of them aimed at Huan An. He asked if the young man changed his mind to be called Daddy. The young man will grin and said that everything was true. Now he had a different desire. He will beat his opponent until he knelt down and lick his shoes. These words were regarded as a mockery and denting. Almost immediately, a blow flew towards the young man. Huan An managed to protect his face. The young man was sure that the attack would be powerful, but there was not a scratch on it, and it was not at all like the blow of one of the best students. After this trial attempt, the guy said that Huan An should be more careful, that he is not as simple as it seems. The enemy called for help, and Huan An hurried his friend to participate, because it was clear that he could not cope with 2. While he was waiting for a comrade, an adversary again attempted him, who decided to try to cut him with his blade. Huan An was not at a loss, and when the sword was in dangerous proximity to the young man, he took advantage of his disappearance technique. At this time, Chen Yuan began a battle with the second attacker. The hero said that if he asks well, he will not have to suffer him quickly. The young man hit the enemy in the face. This gesture became very humiliating for him, and the BIYU team participant was even more angry. The guy rushed at Chen Yuan with fists. It was expected for him, and even more so since he prepared him another portion of slap in the face. We can say that the hero defeated the enemy with 1 slap. The enemy was lying on the ground unable to rise. His head was spinning, and Chen Yuan crouched side by side and began to ask whether he was enough or is it required to add. And finally, after the next attack of the hero, the opponent decided to give up. The guy directly asked not to beat him anymore. And not far from them, there was another battle. A participant in the playing team found where his suddenly disappeared opponent is hiding. But the young man felt when he got up above him and jumped out from under the ground precisely at the moment when he was about to cut him. It turns out that his abilities will not be pumped everywhere. He already understood this, and now he will have to get out somehow. The young man began to immediately call Chen Yuan to the rescue. The enemy had already directed his weapon in his direction and began to shout that he was ended. And our hero awarded his opponent with an extreme slap in the face, and she was so strong that the participant flew away very far. He flew to the legs of Huan An and thereby became a target for his comrade. Bai Yu watched them and didn't understand where they got such a force. Ye Yun did not like the fact that her opponent was distracted. This was the reason to hit the young man in the face, and he flew to the ground. His friends immediately ran up to him and began to repeat that they did not succeed and they were poorly prepared because they underestimated their opponents. The young man went to the girl and asked him to stop, otherwise then he would not stop him. And Bai Yu said that she would not feel fate, but Ye Yun did not agree. Chen Yuan suggested that he be called Daddy and then he would think whether to listen to him and let go. "Well, how much can you?" The guys took turns taking out each other. This time, the young man gained strength and attacked the hero with the words that he would kill him. What a shame! Bai Yu was again on the ground and in addition began to beg Chen Yuan to stop. But the hero was not enough for the hero. He put the guy on his knees and lowered his blade on his shoulder in the neck. And in this pose, he waited for the long-awaited magical word. It turns out that Bai Yu is not so impenetrable. Oh, if the teacher had seen him now, he would have had a heart attack. But the young man could no longer be stopped. He called the hero through the word Daddy and simply exhausted his mercy. Chen Yuan was quite pleased with this situation. Now, the turn of the rest of the other team has come. Bai Yu shouted that they fell to his knees, even if he was not alone in such a terrible situation. If the rest are found out for this scene, then at least he will have some kind of believable story. The guys knelt down and began to repeat, like a prayer, the most welcome Weiber of the hero. Chen Yuan thought they were good and obedient boys. Ye Yun decided that it was enough and said that it was time to go. The leaders turned around and silently left this place. The Bai Yu team asked if he was ready to just let them go, and he angrily replied that of course he would not leave this and will surely take revenge. The guy wanted to kill all three because they humiliated him. They wanted to hear a clear plan of action, and he suddenly remembered that there was one monster, the king of the forest, and he's incredibly strong, from which many students died. They began to dream that Ye Yun with the guys definitely could not cope with him. And Bai Yu said that he has a pill to attract monsters. The guy will set the king of the forest on them, and then will watch his offenders die one at a time. Friends held him, and the same as they will die from other people's hands. And the Star Three still could not defeat the hellish water snake. They had fought with him for an hour, and there was no result. This monster could change the form from the reptile became a sea dragon. Ye Yun saw the fatigue of the guys and decided to cheer them up. The girl kneading the animal intently and noticed that he was clearly tired and defended by his last strength. The mistress suggested that there was still a little. She offered to attack the monster together, only in different places. There was nothing to do because they already tried everything and everything is to no avail. It worked. The enemy fell a hassle and did not move anymore. The program counted the Ye Yun team 130 points. While Huan An was tapping his clothes, Chen Yuan was engaged in extracting. It was necessary to choose the option, cultivation, blood, or silver skeleton. The hero was very interested in the third option, and he, without hesitation, chose it, because the guy secretly did this from his friends. But as soon as the energy of the murdered water snake began the transition to the body of the hero, the young man sharply felt unwell. Huan An noticed that his friend fell on all fours and hurried from him. The guy was worried that the hero was too tired. And Chen Yuan said that it is bad with his cultivation. It was urgent to rest, and he looked at Ye Yun in the hope that she would allow. But the girl was eager to meet the king of the forest, which is considered the strongest demon. The monster lived in the forest, and if they go further, then there will be a high probability of meeting him. Huan An was the first to agree to this adventure. The guys were interested in how many points would award their system when they can be killed. Ye Yun told them that they would give 1,000 points. Everything sounded very tempting. The girl warned them not to be smart that it was so easy to cope with the monster. Brother reminded her that before the end of the competition, there were 2 hours left, and it is worth trying to give a chance to defeat the Forest King. Meanwhile, Bai Yu has already tamed an incredibly powerful enemy. On the sides of the guy, his friend stood, and the guys thought that this was a very terrible beast. He looked like a tarantula, only huge. The young man asked to remain calm. Then he ordered one to feed the spider's pills, and the second told the other to throw next to Ye Yun. The plan was clear, but the guys were afraid to move in the proximity of this hairy monster. Bai Yu immediately put him in place. After all, the young man cherished only his life, and the rest did not interest him. And then he simply began to push him forward so that he would quickly fulfill his assignment. After all, the tarantula slept deeply. The young man trembled with his whole body. He approached him and even heard the beating of his heart. In his hands, he held the coveted pill. Thoughts were only that the Forest King would not awaken. It turned out, he coped. Now he is a hero. It's a pity that for this he is not put in the competition. The guy came to the head of the guy that if the monster sleeps so tightly, why not kill him himself, and then he will become an absolute winner. But he was also in no hurry to return to the rest. Now he touched the spider and laughed at the first person who came to him so close. Something went not according to the plan, and the numerous eyes of the tarantula opened. Apparently, the animal did not quite like to stroking. Bai Yu shouted that he had to run. But one player still remained to admire the beast. He did not understand why the rest are running from the cave. And when someone felt on himself, someone's gaze raised his eyes upstairs. The guy saw the king woke up, and this is the last thing he saw in his life. The team was all walking along the path. Ye Yun was strange that they still did not stumble upon the king of the forest. It seemed to the girl rather strange. And then the guys saw that their recent acquaintances were running from the side of the cave. She did not want to believe that Bai Yu was ahead of her. But the guy looked frightened. Behind him, the second participant in his team fled, and the third was not visible. But instead of him, at a great speed, the king of the forest approached them. Bai Yu shouted that the omnipotent Ye Yun would save him. The girl's brother was very angry because competitors woke the monster. Ha! All three came across. They fled right to the guys and in their hands squeezed the pill of attracting the king of the forest. Fair Ye Yun immediately forgot all the insults to him. She began to defend them as her friends and herself fell under the distribution of the king of the forest. The brother, as usual, was worried about a relative, but she did not want to feel unnecessary attention, and she replied that he was more careful. Her intuition suggested that there would be a trash further. Chen Yuan approached the spider on the other side. In his hands, he was already holding a weapon, about to be ahead of the lead. Huan An, too, decided to participate and said that he would try to distract a strong monster. The young man stood opposite the enemy and began to scream to notice him. This plan was a success so far by half. The king of the forest rushed towards a loud guy who was waiting for him to attack. As soon as one of the sharp limbs aimed at him, he had no choice but to disappear. Now he was underground and felt safe. At this time, two approached from the back at once. Chen Yuan with Ye Yun attacked the king, but were forced to stop abruptly. The monster really was fully consistent with its title. The guys suddenly became at the sight. The hero thought that the enemy was very fast, and the girl asked him to dodge as often as possible. They managed not to suffer. Ye Yun said that this would not work because he does not have a single blind zone. At this moment, Huan An ended the air, and he climbed to the surface. Spider with a young man met their eyes, and the monster rushed to the player's mink. Having collected more air into the lungs, he again disappeared from sight. The king was also smart. He took off above the ground and hung in the air. Apparently he was tired that the guys constantly hiding. The beast accelerated and fell to the ground, just in the place where Huan An. The earth diverged at the place of its fall. The guy flew to the surface. He did not think that he would like the most, and the beast has a certain fighting strategy. Huan An remained in place, and the spider was already aiming at the young man who repeatedly set himself under the blow. This could end sadly, and the team would have lost a leading participant. But they always helped each other, and this time did not leave him alone with the monster. Tarantula again ahead of the guys and almost pierced them with his sharp peaks. At that moment, it was very dangerous. Bai Yu admired the battle from the side. Everything suited him, because soon he will not be competitors. Their business was bad. When they had nowhere to run and couldn't dodge, Chen Yuan took advantage of the protective aura of innate energy. This did not help. The guys could not hold the opponent's blow and flew in different directions. The hero thought that fortunately there was a protective element, otherwise such an attack would be really dangerous for him. Ye Yun has not lost her balance, but the girl was seriously injured. She began internal bleeding. Then she said that she had to come up with something, otherwise they would die at the hands of this monster. The hero will stretch her 3 healing pills. They had an amazing effect of wound healing. She did not expect that he also had such. Then they heard the voice of Huan An, who said that they had to run away. Chen Yuan understood that they had no other way out. The hero said that he would cover them so that they could be the first to hide. But the friend was against it. He said that he would stay with him. But Chen Yuan insisted and had to listen to him. Leaving, Huan An's sister wished him good luck and asked him to be careful. Yeah, he will have a very difficult battle. The enemy was approaching very quickly. The young man had a small plan that had to be checked. The hero took advantage of the monkey cry, who helped him to muffle the spider for a while. At this time, he was able to hide in forest thickets. The guy asked what they would do if their competitors run away. He hoped that Bai Yu had a backup plan. The rabbit of the forest was furious that he was foolish. He could not let them go and therefore released a liquid sticky web into the guys. They blocked their way. Chen Yuan said they would try to move to the other side, but their efforts were in vain. All attempts to escape were unsuccessful. The enemy cut off all the ways to retreat. It was clear that the spider would not let them go. Bai Yu was in the 7th heaven with happiness. The young man knew that the monster was not in vain called the king of the forest and the leader of all demons. He waited for the deaths to enjoy the deaths of competitors. The Ye Yun team was trapped. The spider was already approaching them. It only remained to fight until the last breath. Chen Yuan squeezed the weapon and rushed to the attack first. The rest followed him, but the guys realized that, even having united their forces, they were not equal. Huan An even fell, saying that he could no longer. Noticing his favorite, the king of the forest hurried to him. The hero noticed that the enemy changed the trajectory of movement and began to shout to his friend so that he was more careful. But he was not going to do anything. He decided to look his death in person. But at Chen Yuan, he did not allow the enemy to kill his comrade and managed to protect him. And at this time, on the other hand, Ye Yun attacked, who aimed at the very heart of the king of the forest. The enemy saw all his enemies and kept the situation under control. The acute limb pierced through the girl's body through. Competitors saw that the team captain was mortally wounded and began to bet on the remaining players. Bai Yu ordered a friend to finish, and it's time to get out of here. However, the young man protested. He wanted to watch the show to the end. But the guy said that the competition will end soon and they should think about how to gain the missing number of points in order to overtake everyone. The guys turned around and went in search of monsters. They believed that their competitors were already doomed. When they die, the Bai Yu team will breathe calmly. However, Chen Yuan did not give himself offense. He managed to keep the spider blow. The situation that occurred with Ye Yun greatly upset the hero, but at the same time gave him strength. The girl did not feel very good. She said that the healing pills that the young man had already given her already ended, and her fighting power was greatly exhausted. Somewhere on the sidelines, Huan An. The guy felt guilty for suggesting going to defeat the Lord of the Forest. Chen Yuan noticed how a comrade was killed and said that this was 100% of Bai Yu and his people attracted the monster to them. The hero said that it is early to give up and they will certainly find a way out and a weak place in their powerful enemy. Huan An was shocked how his comrade is impenetrable because he could not lose faith in victory. And now the young man heard that he also had a plan. Amazing! Having reassured him, Chen Yuan said that he does not know if this would work, but he would need Huan An help. He was ready for anything, you just have to ask. And friends have already noticed that the enemy was preparing for a new attack. Chen Yuan waited until the acute limb approached them as close as possible. The hero took advantage of the flaming palm and noticed that the spider flinched and pulled away. Ye Yun was on the bench and did not take part. But the girl noticed the secret technique of the sect of the flaming sun, which attacked the leader of the forest. It turned out! The guys had a chance of salvation, and now Chen Yuan threw a bottle to a comrade. What is this? Then the hero told what Huan An help is. While he is distracting the enemy, a friend must throw this flask in his mouth. The guys talked their actions again. They understood that they would not have a second chance and everything should work out on the first attempt. Huanan moved away and the hero began to attract the attention of the tarantula. When he saw that the enemy began to approach, the young man began to prepare for protection. He managed to restrain the power of his ability, and at this time, his brother Yeyun was already digging a tunnel underground to the king of the forest. He understood that Chen Yuan could not endure the monster endlessly. And just when the hero already had strength at the end, a blonde with a bottle in his hand appeared from the ground. The king of the forest had already pushed the hero who hit very much when he fell. This delighted the spider and he opened his mouth to shout in his own language that he would swallow him now. But he was surprised that the guys prepared for him to eat. Huanan was not very aimed because he managed to accurately make an undermining and reaching the surface, he was right by the dent of the spider's mouth. After completing the assignment from a comrade, he decided that now he had the right to find out what kind of liquid was in a bottle and will it work. But time passed and nothing happened. And then Chen Yuan admitted that he was not sure what they did. The behavior of the monster has not changed in any way. The enemy still shouted disgustingly and headed towards friends who were very scared. Now it was clear that the plan failed, and when the spider approached them, he suddenly calmed down. Then he froze in one place, not one of his limb trembling, but in the end, he generally collapsed to the ground. The guys did not understand what kind of reception it was. It remained to approach and check whether the leader of the animals died. Chen Yuan examined the enemy's hairy body. He swung at him with a blade and did not see any reaction. At this moment, Huanan was very happy. Hooray! They are saved! It turns out that what he gave the king of the forest is the poison that the guy removed from the pills that he received from the fourth elder. He did not think that the toxins would destroy the beast. Chen Yuan began to extract materials from the body of a demonic beast. There were options: blood or spider talent. The young man chose the ability of the eyes on his back. He considered that this is a great skill that will help to detect any attacks of enemies from behind. Then the program called the names of the guys and said that 1,000 points were received. Huanan was glad that they managed to get rich. The guy was in euphoria because it is more than all the points that they received for previous monsters' murders. Yeyun said that the time of the competition has come to an end and it is time for them to get out of the demonic place. The hero aimed at those who sent them into a trap, which harmed the lady. He agreed to leave the game in order to take accounts with 2 villains who fought a dishonest battle. At this time, the ceremony has already begun. The teacher gathered all the participants in the competition at the secret gate. The man asked why he did not see Ye Yun. The crowd began to whisper. It turned out that no one saw her, and Bai Yu, to finish this topic as soon as possible, raised his hand. The young man told the 17th elder that when he left the demonic forest, he saw the older sister who was heading to the cave of the forest king. The rest of the participants could not believe that the girl decided to challenge the most powerful monster. Some suggested that everything for Yeyun and her teams ended very tragic. The elder did not believe the words of the young man. He knew the character and potential of his student well. The man said that she was not strong enough to resist the king of the forest and could not do so stupid. Bai Yu was tired of talking on this topic. He wanted to quickly move on to the announcement of the results of a grand competition. The teacher was very upset because it was a very promising and strong student. It was useless to wait, and the man began the ceremony. In the first place was Chen Yuan with its 890 points. Then there was Ye Yun, who scored 100 points less than our hero, and the bronze medalist was her brother, who had 1,630 points. The fourth was Bai Yu, on the account of which there were only 430 points. The elder said that the guys beat the record of the academy. The guy couldn't understand how they could have so many points if they died. He was very shifted. They walked around him again. The elder explained that this is quite real. And this can mean only one thing, that they successfully challenged the king of the forest and killed him. The words that the sage said were even more incredible. At this moment, the secret gates lit up and the Yeyun team passed through them. In full force, they are still alive. All 3 immediately went to Bai Yu. They wanted to hear excuses for his dishonest acts. Huanan grabbed him and began to tell that Because of him, the guy almost lost his life. However, he decided to unlock the accusations and pretended that he did not understand anything. Chen Yuan approached them and hit the slap in the face. So he decided to recall the recent situation when he asked for mercy on his knees. The guys forgot where they are and that the witnesses of this scene were the 14th elder. The man did not leave their quarrel without attention and demanded an explanation. Ye Yun felt guilty that she did not have time to start the ceremony and therefore asked to allow her to explain everything herself. The sage listened to her story from beginning to end and then looked towards Bai Yu and his friend. His gaze was very harsh. Two immediately began to make excuses, only their words were very unlike the truth. They claimed that the girl agreed. The elder was ready that they would not dare to admit, and therefore invited them to visit the patriarch, who has a spatial mirror with which you can see the past. That's all. The mirror of heaven will show everything, as Ye Yun said. The guys fell to their knees and began to ask for mercy from the 17th elder. Bai Yu said he was blinded by stupidity and pleading his guilt. The man decided that they were not obliged to attend the competition and in the sect. He ordered them to be taken to the Hall of Justice. Bai Yu looked towards the guys. He was very angry at them and did not leave the hope of punishing them. He knew that he would receive a mild punishment because his uncle held the position of head of the courtroom. However, this did not frighten the hero, and he decided not to answer him in any way. Approaching the bound young man, Chen Yuan slapped him a ringing slap in the face. Bai Yu was painful and humiliating to receive them and asked the guards to take him away from the site as soon as possible. The sage admired all the existing abilities and techniques of the young man. He said that, having broken all the records, he impressed the old man. But Chen Yuan was very embarrassed. The guy said that the elder is very kind to him. Then he admitted that he was just lucky with the group. He also noted the power of Ye Yun's sister. The girl stood nearby and heard everything perfectly. She did not know what secrets were hiding for secrets, but he was very modest, and it was this human quality that leads to high successes. The 14th elder really liked that the hero did not be proud of himself and did not fuss. Very good. Then the sage turned to all those present and said that the students who had undergone a test of entering the sect should appear in 3 days and register. Chen Yuan was going to leave first as he was stopped by Ye Yun. The girl said that she was very grateful to him that the guy praised her in front of the teacher. Hearing her words, the hero realized that on the right track. Then he said, "What was supposed to say that they were a team, and in the world of post-apocalypse I have no equal."